Hello, JJC students and community. It is wonderful to share in this moment of recognition and celebration with you. Let's take a moment to reflect on the progress we have made as a society to support access and opportunity for all. I can say I have witnessed these changes here at JJC personally over 20 years at the college. I have seen the spirit of equal access thrive through the growth of the accommodations we provide and the resources we allocate to support new technology and awareness activities. As you know, the U.S. Department of Labor spearheads National Disability Employment Awareness Month in October, and their theme this year is America's Recovery, powered by inclusion. I cannot think of something more fitting at the national level, but also here at Joliet Junior College. The pandemic changed our lives forever. It changed the way we learn and the way we communicate. But do you know what didn't change? JJC's resolve to ensure that with this transformation around us, an inclusive workforce and accessible educational experience remained our top priority. That is a credit to our students and employees who embedded this philosophy in their everyday interactions and serve as enthusiastic advocates to ensure these values persist. Each of you are playing an important role in fostering a more inclusive workforce, one where every person is recognized for his or her abilities every day of the month. If I had to choose one reason why I have invested many years of my education and career at JJC, it would be this. The college exists to support you and your success. There is nothing more important to me than knowing you have maximized the opportunities available to you, and that the college has provided a pathway to education and perhaps a mentor, a new career opportunity, and new friends. Your success is personal to me. I want to share in this moment with you to reflect on where we have been and where we need to go. Though this year has been full of unexpected challenges, know that we will come through this together. So please continue to lean into your JJC community and know that my door is always open, even virtually. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Welcome and good morning. My name is Patrick Hall. I am the club advisor of Disability Awareness Club. So welcome to Disability Awareness Day 2021. We're really excited to be here and offer it yet again. I'm not going to talk for too long, but before I go through today's schedule, I just want to take care of some thank yous to everybody we have involved today. First and foremost, the students of Disability Awareness Club. I give a lot of credit, and I actually want to take some time. Let me see some applause flood my screen. Show me some of those little hands clapping for the students of DAC who are really, there were hurdles, there were challenges. Obviously, we're coming out of a pandemic, still in the pandemic, depending on how you look at it. But we were able to come together and put on this event. So again, a lot of kudos to them. Next year, we're hoping to be back in person. It seemed to be the smartest decision to stay virtual this year, which is the next best thing. So we're still able to offer a great event, albeit through Microsoft Teams today. Next, we have Margot Underwood, one of our first speakers. She's a psych professor here at JJC and has always been a great partner to our club. Always delivers a great presentation. So looking forward to having her share what she has to say. Then we also have this Office of Student Rights, who we also really appreciate their insight and their involvement. I believe Heidi Stukel and Jessica Contreras, one or both of them, will be here talking with us. Then we have Adam Woke, the manager of Disability Services. Disability Services has always been a great support and aid to the club, so happy to have them here. Then finally, we also have Jovan Benson, who is our keynote speaker today. He's going to share some stories, talk a little bit with us, and so excited to hear from him as well. And then finally, we have CTF Illinois, a great organization who assists adults with disabilities, and they submitted some interviews from adults in their various programming, supports, services, etc., that we're excited to show later this afternoon. Okay, before I let Esley take over, I'll quickly run through our schedule. I kind of touched on it a little bit. Esley and I are doing a quick welcome address. Then at 10:10, Margot will deliver her presentation from 10:10 to 10:30. 10:30 to 10:45, we have time for Office of Student Rights to come in and do their presentation. Then we have a break from 10:45 to 11:20. This gives people time to do what they need to do. If they're at work, if they're at school, you have some time to attend to what you need to. We're also going to be playing a small game during the break where we're just going to guess some tunes through Kahoot. So if you're available, stay on during the break and we'll have some fun and hand out some swag, some DAC swag to the winner. From 11:20 to 12:20, we're going to have our student panel, which is always a feature of Disability Awareness Day. That's where members of Disability Awareness Club get up and talk about their various disabilities and the impacts it's had on them, both socially, personally, and in their education. We'll have some time at the end of that panel for Q&A. So that panel goes from 11:20 to 12:20, and then 15 to 20 minutes for Q&A. At 12:40, Adam Woke of Disability Services is going to come on and speak. Then at 1 o'clock is when our keynote speaker, Joe Vaughn, is going to give his presentation from 1 to 1:45. Then at the end of the day, 1:45, we'll show that video montage from CTF Illinois and then close it out. So we have a jam-packed day today. We're really happy and excited to be here. And that's about it for me. You don't have to hear from me too much longer. Esley, it's all you. Take it away.
I want to thank everyone for being here today. By being here today, you're helping make a change, because you're going to be learning a lot. And all we ask is for you to listen, ask questions when possible, and be ready to learn and also take it with you. So thank you, everyone.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get Margot set up and spotlighted, and then when she's ready, she'll get started. Again, as far as the agenda goes, feel free to pop in and out throughout the day and different speakers. We just ask if you are going to pop in periodically to try and be here at the start of the presentation so it's not too distracting to presenters or audience members. And Margot, the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Jake or Patrick, this is Sherry Morrow. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Is the chat enabled? Because the Site 101 section 084, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 students here watching the presentation. So do we have an option to get into the chat?
We do, but we have temporarily disabled it for those with sight impairments because they have a screen reader that will actually read all of that. So during the presentations, we ask that people refrain from accessing the chat if possible.
Okay, but it will be available later on so we can make our questions.
Correct.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Can anyone not hear me? I don't know, can they hear me?
I hear you. We hear you.
Thanks, Esley. I was like, dude, can you hear me? Am I in here? Okay, first of all, what I would like people to do, both in my class who's sitting in front of me, and if you're watching this, is to take out a blank sheet of paper and write your name on it. So don't write Y-O-U-R name, write your name like Riley. So please write your name down. I'm going to be asking you to write down a few things today. And I also would like to instruct my students. The way this works for me is I ask you to write down 10 things you learned from this presentation. And they can also be thoughts that you have. You might know something, but something else occurs to you as we're doing this presentation. So what I'm looking for is 10 ways that I know you didn't waste 20 minutes of your life. Okay, so this presentation should run till about 10:30, and we are going to be talking about something called ableism. And this was suggested to me as a presentation choice from one of the students that actually was planning the conference. She said, how about ableism? And I said, well, let's go figure out what it is and what I should be learning. So I would like you to read the question on the board, and I'm going to read it aloud to you. Please take a minute and think of people you know or you have known with disabilities and estimate the number. And then please write it down. So I want you to kind of go back in your world and take a minute, really take a minute and start counting. How many people do I know with disabilities? It's not a contest. I'm not looking for the biggest number. I'll never care what it is. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, we're going to expand that idea a little bit. Maybe some of your numbers will grow, but I first want to do what I kind of call a reality check or a pulse check. I want you to think of the following categories. I want you to think, where do we encounter people with disabilities in our real lives? So where is it that we encounter them? Do you have any family members? If so, I just don't want you to write down a number. I want you to write down their initials, because that means that you actually know them, right? If you can put a first and last initial, that means you know them, not like, well, I had a friend once in 3rd grade that used a cane. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is, do you have any family members, and please write down their initials, that have a disability? Do the same for friends or people you've dated. Friends doesn't mean like I say hi to you in the hallway. Friend means that your name is Juan Zavallo and you go with Margot to see Esley dance in the Wolves dance contest, or dancing team, as Esley was on. So proud of her. Dated, I think you got dated. I don't need to explain that. Write down their initials. How many teachers have you had with a disability? All through your life, you've had many teachers, many teachers. How about people at work, your colleagues? How many people have you actually worked with on a day-to-day basis with a disability? Employers, bosses? We call that the 3rd floor in our world. Anybody who works at JJC, there's a 3rd floor over in A building. And if you go over there, it's hopefully for good reasons, but it's almost like getting called to the principal's office. You're like, oh, am I going there? And then I put musicians, but let me explain what I mean by this. Musicians, artists, actors, people that you really admire their craft. It could be athletes. It could be any kind of artistic people, because athletics is definitely artistic, isn't it, Josie? Best basketball player, Josie. Woo, crowd roars. By the way, you can tell Josie's my student who's an athlete. Very proud of her. I want you to write down their initials. And I hope some of you are recognizing that maybe this wasn't as easy as you thought it would be. Because when we think of ourselves as being open to disabilities, does that mean we're really open? Does that mean that the society is really open, that we allow people to move up and be part of our community? I call that a reality check, because there's one thing to write down a number, and there's another thing to think, who do I deal with? Especially in COVID times, guess what's happened? If it's not necessary, we don't interact with each other, do we? And that is one of the things that I want you to remember as the world is opening back up, as you're making your new social networks, as you're hiring people, as you apply for jobs. Look around your world and kind of say, hey, what's the reality of what I'm seeing? And so my goals today are very simple. I want to define ableism. I want to kind of explore what I mean and what you mean when we say disability. Because I said, write down the number of people you know with a disability. Well, what do I mean by that? And then I want to talk just briefly about what I want you to do differently. And I call it respect. And maybe some of you are at the point where you can do advocacy, which is standing up for people. But if nothing else, I want us to respect some of the things we say and some of what we put out there. So ableism, there's some definitions up there. But what I want us to think about is we might not be jerks. You might not be a jerk. You might be open to something. But do we always know what to do when we're with somebody who's in a wheelchair? Do we always know how to act? I believe, and this is from my own personal experience, so keep that in mind, that a lot of times we're not able to identify ableism because we like to think of ourselves as good people. I like to think of myself as someone who respects everyone. but you can't understand everyone's perspective, can you? And so I have personally had to use a wheelchair, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but are there times I select out because it's such a pain in the butt to take the wheelchair places? And so I want you to really think about it. Do we acknowledge the people around us that have disabilities? Or are we kind of brutal sometimes? I know teachers that roll their eyes. I don't want to extend your time. I don't want to do this. And so there is a person, and I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to tell the story of why this person, Stacy Milburn, she was 33 and she has recently passed away, but she was a person who considered herself a warrior for disability justice. And I put the link up, so for anybody who's interested, I will also drop this link in the chat so people have access to this PowerPoint slide. But she viewed things in such a strong but positive way. If everybody takes a look at the second quote, she considered herself creative. She didn't sit around and say, oh my God, everyone's mean to me, everyone hates me, da 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 da. Well, she did sometimes because she has some books with some bad words in it. But her attitude was that I have to be creative. One time she had to go up a ramp and there was no ramp. And so she takes her shoes off and props them against the stairs so she could get her wheelchair up, and it worked. And she's very proud of that. Like, I just looked at her attitude and I thought, how many problems do I have to solve on my way to class that even touch that? And then the last thing that she had up there was a story where she was, before her disorder advanced, she was still mobile, she was still walking, and she was in a junior high and she fell down in the toilet stall. And she was contemplating how she was going to push herself up. So this group of girls walked in, and I know you're expecting some bullying story where the girls were, no, that wasn't the case at all. The girls walked in and they were talking about stuff like boys and bras and stuff. She called it like normal, frivolous stuff, right? And she's like, we're from different worlds, different realities. I'm contemplating how to get myself up without embarrassing myself. And they're contemplating what they're going to wear. And she said these different worlds aren't even really apparent. The girls weren't mean. The girls weren't anything. It's just, it's that different in the way that she sees going to the bathroom versus the way they did. And so this is a term that I would love for a lot of you to be able to understand without being sarcastic or rolling your eyes. A lot of times when we talk about bigger terms, people shut down. What are you accusing me of? Da 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 da. No, take a minute and think about it. It's like when you have the worst day and you get a flat tire and somebody yells at you and then classes can't, all these things can happen to you at one time. Intersectionality is really kind of saying that when it rains, it can pour. It can be really tough. And we've all had days like that. So take it out of this happens to you and think sometimes, and excuse the word, this isn't a very good word, sometimes we just get messed over. Messed is probably not the best word I can use, but there just seems to be so many things happening at the same time. And I can see that. There are days where I look up and think, how can I get this done? Think of intersectionality as lots of things coming at you at once. And maybe that's not so easy. Now, I'm going to talk about disability in two ways. I want to make sure that I reference the American Disability Act because it's the law, and I want to make sure that if you ever are treated unfairly, you know you have a national law to protect you. And I want to talk about visible versus invisible disabilities. For those of you who love to write down a definition, here is the definition of the American Disability Act. And as you're looking at it and maybe writing it down, what I want you to think about is how does this make things fair? How does this make things so that everyone really has a fair opportunity? So if I give one of you an exam that's written in another language, and I give one of you an exam where the copy is so, back in the day when we gave paper, so worn that you can't even read the words of the answers, and I give you one of the exams that somebody already marked the answers on, you would think that those three situations are not equal, right? That's how I want you to think about disabilities. It's about making sure that everybody gets the same exam. That's all. And I promise that if it was one-on-one, almost every single one of you would want it to be fair. It's when we don't understand things that's when we get mad. We're like, well, why does this person get this? Or why does that person get that? Or they're so lucky to get this. And I'm going to go over some of those kind of faulty thinking steps in just a second. But I think of the ADA, and that's the definition, is just making it fair. And I don't want any of you to ever be in a situation where somebody goes, well, you get special privileges. Really? How about needing those special privileges? What's that like day in and day out, that you never get a break? Because a lot of times what people deal with is it just never ends. And I don't personally think extending test time is the answer to life. I think we can do a lot better, but that's just me. Now, I would like you, and I said we were going to explore some of the things that people say that they don't realize are not thoughtful. When I talk about people at an airport, I was in a wheelchair for a little bit of time, and I actually had to fly with my friend Sherry because we were working on a grant to stop sexual assault and violence and domestic violence and stalking. And we were going to Washington, D.C., and I had to bring my mom with because I didn't realize how hard it was to travel in a wheelchair. So my mother, I'm 50 years old, my mother had to come with to help me travel. Never traveled in a wheelchair before. By the way, not easy. And so anyway, it comes time for the plane, and I was walking a little, and I got up and I walked to the thing, and you could just see people looking at me like this. Well, look, now that the plane's there, you can walk. What I want to say to you, and this is just one example, we're unaware of what we say and how it affects people. These are all potential reasons that somebody would be in a wheelchair just because I can stand. And I want to use the word I, me, I. I came to class after cancer treatments. I taught statistics from the hospital. I am not a lazy girl. But when I needed my wheelchair, I didn't want people to think, oh, because you can stand up, you never need it. Were all of you aware that all of these things are reasons? All of the things that I'm putting on the screen are reasons that somebody might be in a wheelchair. Do they need to apologize to the crowd? Now, I want to put some other statements up, and I want you to do a reflection. I've given you reasons that people might be in a wheelchair that aren't necessarily they will never walk again. Would anybody walk up to me when I had cancer and say, you, get out of that damn wheelchair. You shouldn't be in a wheelchair. Cancer girl, get out. Of course not, right? Could you imagine saying that to somebody? But when you think things like that, the thing that I teach my classes, and I hope you guys remember, is if I don't know why, let me find out why. If I'm like, why is that person doing that? Then maybe educate yourself. Here are 3 additional statements that people make. And what I would like you to do is take a minute and think of reasons that people might bring their dog to school. Just take a minute and maybe kind of write down your own reasons. People are so lucky to get extra time on tests. That is so wrong in so many ways. Why is that wrong? And wow, someone forgot to take their meds today. That's not something you want to say to people. So I want you to take just a minute and think about why saying these things might be very short-sighted. Some of you right away are nodding at me. In my class, some people just get it. I can see them just getting it. So now I want to talk about this thing that sometimes explains what people can't see. When we talk about disabilities, we often think that they're visual disabilities and we can see everything. Because of course we have the right to judge other people, said no one ever, right? So if I can't see your disability, is it really a disability? Of course it is, and it is none of my business. How about just be nice, simple. And so when we talk about things like invisible disabilities, we are talking about things that people don't expect. You don't know if someone's had a stroke and it affects their cognition and thinking. You don't know when you look at IQ scores that IQ is an aggregate or group score. And when I assess or test your intelligence, you may be just a savant at things like language and terrible at spatial arrangements. So when you go try to park a car, that is not possible for you. So then we scream at you. Migraines, do all of you know that migraines are a documented disability and deserve people's respect? You can see a migraine on an MRI. Migraines are horrible. If you have a migraine and you can't come to class, I better treat you with respect. How is that different than anything else because I can't see it? Well, actually you can if you have an MRI, right? So when you're looking at different things that you don't know about, I promise that number in the beginning was much bigger than you thought because you don't know who has invisible disabilities. And I might argue that many of you don't know that what you're dealing with makes it a disability yourself. Many of you, I argue, and this is one of my problems, is that your perception of disability is, well, I just make it through. And the way our school system works, and this is K through 12, if you are getting a C, that means that your impairment is not, or your functioning is not impaired. So your impairment is not something we have to deal with, and we'll pull out the support. Does that make any of you crazy? If you're capable of an A and you're getting a C and I go, no problem, you're fine. So stereotypes that people have are something that I want you to think about when you view your colleagues, your peers, your friends, your family situations. Now, these are the things we don't say. And I'm not going to use the word microaggression because I think most of you have heard that term quite a bit, and I don't need to tell you what one is, but sometimes you'll catch yourself saying something really stupid. And what I guess I would say is there is absolutely nothing wrong with asking when you don't know what to do. People will always, and I'm going to go to maladjusted or angry, people will always tell me, well, I held the door for somebody and they got really mad. So you got mad about that. That doesn't make you a bad person. People are allowed to have emotions. People are allowed to get angry and frustrated. Could you imagine having to cart your wheelchair around everywhere? Or wait for people to get out of your way when you're trying to get to class? Don't you have bad and good days? It's okay to be angry some days. I'm angry and I have very little to be angry about. So when you look at these kind of expectations, or talking to people as if they're children, or not talking to them at all, I think one of the biggest things that I want you to think about is this idea that if we don't want to do anything wrong, sometimes that's a decision in itself, isn't it? By not wanting to do anything, by not asking the question, Esley, what would you like me to do about this? I can't tell you how many times I've seen to my beautiful, wonderful, amazing Esley, do you see what I mean? And then I'm like, oh, face palm. Like, did I just say that to Esley? And she laughs at me. And I also want to hit that button about asexual and dating. When we talk about clever, I have a student named Juan, and if anybody was here for a while, you know how charming and wonderful Juan is. And Juan has this cute little trick, and he will drop his phone around cute girls, especially in my honors classes, and he'll drop his phone and the girls will pick up his phone. Like he drops it at them, not at me so I can pick it up. He drops it with a purpose. And so the girls will pick it up and then he'll be like, do you know I palm read? And he'll start reading their palms. I'm like, you little flirt. And I don't think that people, when I have an interpreter in, if I could see the interpreter right now, I like to say words like, and I'm saying it really slow, marigold. So she has to interpret it. And if you do flower, I don't want flower. I want you to interpret marigold or butterfly or princess. Is there anything wrong with telling a joke to an interpreter? So they have to do some funny movements? We can be ourselves. We can do things if we just stop for a minute and ask the person, is this okay if I do this? Or apologize if you say to Esley, can you see what I mean? And Esley just shakes her head and laughs at me and walks away. So I would like to end, and there's some more slides for anybody who would like to see this because I started a minute or two late and I don't want to run everybody late for the whole day. The medical model is always that if something is wrong, it should or could be fixed. Not everything can be fixed and not everybody wants it to be fixed. But the social model says that we can change those barriers. If we change the way things are, if we make things about the person, not the disability, then maybe we can make people feel included and fair, make them feel wanted and happy, laugh more. Because that's the most important thing about ableism that I want you to remember, is that when we move from respect to advocacy, when we move to understanding things, hitting a button on social media saying you like something is not an action. It's not doing anything differently in your life. And I genuinely want you to question your behavior. And for my classes, I would like you to write down one thing that you would like to do differently. Go back and look at those numbers in the beginning of the presentation. Look at your numbers. Do you want to change those? How do you want to move those? What do you want to do differently to make more people feel respected? Because I came up for one word for ableism, I would come up with respect. I would come up with maybe another word, fair. I just want things to be fair. And so I hope that you have thought about things in a little different way. I don't expect you to all go off and change the world, but I do expect you to think about what you can do differently. Thank you, and I will turn it back over, and I will drop this in the chat for everybody. I will turn it back over to the powers that be. I think I went a minute late, so I apologize. I tried to do it. And if anybody is looking at the screen right now, that handsome devil in the picture with me is Juan. If you ever see him rolling down the hallway as we come back, please say hi. He will make you laugh. He has got the smile of 1,000 people. So thank you, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you, Margot. We appreciate you coming on and talking with us. And I think you brought up a lot of great points, and I hope people appreciated your presentation as much as I did. I also share the same sentiments about Juan. He's a great guy, so definitely stop by and pick his brain when you get a chance. We'll move on now. We're going to have the Office of Student Rights come on for a short presentation. I believe Heidi Stuckel and Jessica Contreras are here, so the floor is yours when you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for having us this morning. I am here joined by the rest of the Student Wellness Program. So we'll all each introduce ourselves and give a brief overview of our services and supports for all students here on campus. And then we'll end with a quote. So I'm Heidi Stuckel. I'm a student wellness advocate here at the Joliet Junior College main campus, and I support and empower students to do their best academically while taking care of their mental health.
I'll go next. My name is Jessica Contreras. I'm also a student wellness advocate through our student wellness program. And I too focus on providing emotional support for our students on campus. And I'll pass it along to Azra.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Aushra Telgemes. I'm a student wellness advocate also. And I'm joining my wonderful team when it comes to supporting students who present with all kinds of concerns. And I'll pass it to Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Liaconi. I'm the coordinator of case management. I work closely with Jessica, Heidi, and Aushra, linking students to different services on campus and off. Do a lot of counseling as well. Just kind of like a problem solver. Whatever the student needs, we find solutions. Kelly, introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kelly Nahas. I'm the administrative assistant for the Student Wellness Program. I'm considered the first point of contact here to students in making appointments with all of our wonderful staffed student wellness advocates and case management coordinator.
All right, so I'm going to give a little overview on our student wellness program. Our program focuses on providing mental health awareness, education, and services to students here at the college. Our student wellness program can be found in the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities here on the main campus. Office A 1100. And we also have Ashra now, who is at our Romeoville campus. So we're extending our supports to other campuses as well. Our program was started in the fall of 2019 and has been serving the JJC community in a number of ways. So just in general, our services include a brief assessment for initial services. We do brief and individual counseling services. We do provide up to 10 sessions of free mental health counseling and support. And as Mike said, we also have our case management services, which he works to connect to students to resources both on campus and off campus. We do crisis intervention services as well for students. If they're facing challenges on campus or off campus, we are available to meet with them to work through the challenges that they are going through. We do offer group therapy sessions as well. This semester, hopefully in a couple of weeks, we'll be starting a group called Empower, a group for all women to receive support, additional support here on campus in a group setting. If anyone is interested in receiving group support, feel free to reach out to myself or Ashra. Like I said, we hope to start Empower towards the end of October. We also provide educational workshops, we do presentations around campus, and we do various outreach activities that promote mental health and emotional well-being of all of our students. And on occasion, we do consult and do workshops for faculty and staff as well. If you are interested in receiving confidential mental health services here on campus, there are a number of ways you can connect with us. You can stop by our office. You can send an email to our mental health at jjc.edu email address, or you can fill out all of our forms online with a link, and I will put a card in the chat that has that link, has that telephone number, and has that email address if you're looking to connect with us.
Actually, Heidi, I just threw the Empower Her flyer and the appointment card in the chat as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And now I'm just going to open it up to the rest of the team to see if they'd like to add anything.
I'll jump in, Heidi. I know we had discussed wanting to join today to just let our students know that we have a safe and welcoming spot to come, to just have a safe space to kind of talk about what you're going through. I think many of our students feel like they have to have a mental health diagnosis or have to be dealing with something mental health specific to come see and work in our space. But we see students from um, dealing with a number of different challenges, whether it's challenges at home, wanting to learn how to communicate better with others, going through breakups, going through just feeling overwhelmed with working full time and going to school full time and a lot of different just in general, a lot of different stressors. So I just want students to know that this is a great space just to even start unwinding some of those jumbled up thoughts we may have in our mind or just feeling overwhelmed. So.
Does anybody have any questions that we can answer?
Okay, I'll monitor the chat here for a minute to see if any questions come in. In the meantime, we really appreciate all of you folks from the Student Wellness Center coming on and joining us today. It's a really important department, and mental health is should be looked at just as important as our physical health, which is the message the Student Wellness Center is trying to send and spread around campus. And also what Margot was saying earlier is that mental health can be a disability. Disability is defined by if you are impacted in your day-to-day life in more than one way. Mental health can have a huge impact on your day-to-day life. So I think we need to start thinking of it in another light and be open to the fact that mental health can be a disability.
Yes, thank you for that, Patrick, because that is something we really want our students to know too, especially if they are working with our disability services department, to know that we're also another avenue of support. And it's really about finding your support, various supports on campus. And so it may not just be through one department, but in a combination between ourselves, between disability services, between our instructors, and all the other great student development areas that we have here on campus.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. My name is Keith Allen. I have a quick question.
Hmm.
This is new, and you mentioned that I guess it started in 2019.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was just kind of asking. I know that a lot of the students here are they current students, or what happens when they leave campus? Do you follow up? What type of, you know, just
Yeah,
help
great.
me understand.
Great question. So, as Heidi mentioned, we have a number of different services here. Because of how small our group is and the kind of being a new program, our brief individual counseling services are towards our students that are college credit seeking courses. But that doesn't mean that we turn anyone away. Anyone that's looking for support, we welcome them to our office. And as Mike mentioned, we kind of try to work to how do we resolve, how do we overcome this obstacle? And so that's where Mike really comes in and tries to connect our students with off campus services. We work very hard to build many partnerships in our community so that when we refer our students, we know where they're going, who they're going with, and even help with that process of getting connected with either an agency or an off-campus provider. When students meet with us, and let's say they are reaching that 10th appointment with us, we are already kind of starting that conversation from the beginning and letting them know that maybe it's halfway point. Hey, we're reaching our halfway point of services. Let's start talking about next steps. And once again, we will transition those students to off-campus providers, and really work with them with what works with their insurance. Do we need to get them connected to sliding scale? Are there other avenues that they can connect for support? So really, as long as they get connected with us, then we'll work on figuring out the next steps with them. And we let students know, we can help them up to where we can. A lot of it does require the student then to follow through with any recommendations or next steps, but we'll make that initial plan so they're not navigating that by themselves.
Okay. One more question.
Mhm.
That's a follow up to that because I do know I'm a grandfather,
Mhm.
and so I've had 4 children that I've sent through college, and they get to that college age where people expect them to be an adult, and you just mentioned something very key: follow up.
Mhm.
And one thing that I know is that kids don't follow up. I don't care, you know. So, do you kind of work with the families as well to make sure that they're involved so that they know? Because I know it becomes like they're a parent, they're an adult now, so
Mhm.
they make all their own decisions, and that could be a slippery slope.
Yeah. Well, and good point, right? So they're 18 years old, and so we want to give them those skills. And that's really what it is helping them gain the skills they need to be successful. And we explain it through that process. They are in college and want to move forward and have goals they need to reach. And so let's work together to kind of build that foundation of building, making appointments and having follow through and having that skill so that they can carry those skills to the next goal or the next, kind of chapter in their life. I will say for us, it's not just a referral out. Oftentimes we're referring, giving them the opportunity to grow and use those skills. And then we are following up. If it didn't work out or if they didn't have follow through, then we're having conversations about why there wasn't follow through, or did they encounter a different challenge. And so how do we work past that as well? So, um, if they're receptive to involving family, of course, if the more support we can get that student, the better. But if they're not receptive, and oftentimes we understand why, then that's the point of us being a support and being part of their support system in that process.
Mhm.
Those are great questions, Keith. Thank you. I did see a hand raised over the psych, what is it? Psych 101 class?
Psych 101, section 804, and thank you so much. You know, mental health oftentimes has a great deal of stigma. In fact, my class just completed our chapter 14 on psychological disorders. So this actually plays in great. Can you tell us what a student can expect by coming into the office? Because a lot of times students may walk by and they go, I may need some assistance, or a friend of mine may need some assistance, but I'm scared to go in there because I don't know what to expect. Can you help walk us through that?
That's a great question. Heidi or Ozzer, does anyone want to step in with that one? Or Mike?
I can jump in.
Oh, thanks.
You know, it kind of building on the last question, you know, therapy and recovery it's not a passive process, right? So yes, we're making great strides to reducing stigma and building awareness, but there is an active process that a student must take to engage in the process and to see that recovery. I, along with the other ladies on the team, we go really far to make that a welcoming environment, to make them feel comfortable, to allow them to be heard. But then there's a lot of we promote self-advocacy, right? So following up, I have Keith, I believe his name was. Yeah, we want them to make those efforts for themselves. We want them to make those appointments for themselves. And we can help follow up. Basically, the process is, you know, you go through Kelly to arrange an appointment and intake. She will then send a follow-up email detailing the appointment time and the method of the appointment. We're seeing people online through video chat or via phone primarily. We do see people on campus. We also have just implemented a new it's a screening for mental health in different categories, such as depression, anxiety, substance use, and we're doing that once or twice throughout the course of the sessions with the student to measure where they're at. And then they come in, and you know, the most important thing is to build a relationship. There's a million counseling theories out there, and I think all of them work in their own way if you have a connection with your student and your therapist. So that's the most important part is to build that relationship. Sometimes there is homework. You know, I give homework, and I know students don't want to really hear that, but I do my best to kind of connect the dots. This is why we're doing what we're doing. It's not busy, right? But that's what it is. It's a safe space to come in and you know, verbalize emotions and feelings and thoughts, and but taking it a step further to not just acknowledge the feelings and thoughts, but what can we do about it? What can we do to control our outcome, to be more helpful to ourselves, and in turn, people around us, our own communities. But yeah, a lot of students, this is their first time, this is their first experience, and it seems nervous, but I like to have fun in my sessions. I don't know. I think everybody else does too. This is it doesn't have to be so thick and formal and you know, tense. You gotta break the ice. It can be fun too.
And I do want to add, as Mike said, a lot of times this is the first experience for our students. And so we try to acknowledge and kind of praise them for that courage to come meet with us and take those first steps. And then there's a lot of educating along the way of what therapy looks like and what to expect and what are the expectations for them being part of this process. And so for that first appointment, there's a lot of conversation being had of what their expectations are, what their needs are, and then talking about next steps. So oftentimes we hear students tell us, I was really scared. I didn't even want to walk through the door, but I'm happy that I did. And I think that's great for us to hear that afterwards they feel great. They have some sense of relief and that they feel like they have a plan in place to be able to continue navigating being a student and being an individual and all the responsibilities they have.
And if I can add just one thing too, when I take and speak to the students in the beginning and do a pre-screen with them as well, you kind of get the feel of where they where they might fit better with which therapist, and that would also pretty much decipher which therapist they would see. But we always tell them as well, if you're not comfortable with that therapist, we have other ones too that, you know, we can refer you to. So it's definitely on the student as far as what their preference is, and we take them into consideration every time.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that was a great question. Do we have any more? I see one more hand raised. Since we're going into a break, I think we can allow an extra minute or two. Let me see whose hand that is.
P1 psych.
It's still the Psych 101. So if your answer,
Yeah, that's still mine, and thank all of you for your wonderful answers. You kind of answered the question that I had in terms of the intake process. You know, I guess my question was, what kinds of questions do you ask in your intake process?
So as far as Kelly mentioned, there is a pre-screen, and the pre-screen is to assess, safety is really our immediate concern with students. So we're assessing safety from the beginning. And as Kelly mentioned, she's looking to see who would be a best fit for that student, whether it's case management needs, counseling needs, and if so, then if it's counseling, who is the best advocate to take on that case or work with that student. And then the first appointment is a full psychosocial kind of assessment where we're asking a number of questions to really, the way I present it to students is to really understand what they're going through, as well as understanding the environment they're in and how that may be influencing what they're going through. So we are asking from, how is life as a student, to the work they're doing, if they have an employment off campus, what is home life like, what is family like, what is their support, have they had counseling? I always begin, have they had counseling experiences in the past, so that I have an idea whether this is their first time or not. So we're just gathering a number of information on that student so that we can make the best plan we can for them, or treatment plan moving forward. And then, as Mike said, I think we all like to also just really be personable and really get to know that student. What do they enjoy? What are some coping skills they already have? What are some hobbies that we can utilize that could be therapeutic for them? I see Azra. I think, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure, Jessica. I think you did a good job answering the question. I'll summarize what you just said, that we are looking into different areas of functioning of a young person, which is academics, their relationships with their peers and friends, the family members, and also employment, because many of our students work. And if a student presents with symptoms of anxiety or depression, any other symptoms, we're looking into these areas, how the symptoms are interfering into those areas. And how can we help this student to remove the obstacles? If it's academics, connecting with tutoring services, connecting if there is a mental health diagnosis, such as the major depressive disorder or any other mental disability, we present them as an option to connect with the disability services. If a student, I had one yesterday, had a hard time deciding on a major, encouraged to make an appointment with the career services. So we are looking individually, we are student-centered, and we provide, like Mike said, an environment, a safe and protective environment, like a safe container where they can be themselves and explore, go inside, because they have what they need inside of themselves, but they need that safe environment to bring that out.
Thank you, guys. That was pretty comprehensive. Thanks.
Whoops. Many thanks again to the Student Wellness Center. We really appreciate you taking some time to share info on the center and how students can get involved if they choose to do so. So thanks again.
Thank you
You're
for
very
having us.
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so
Thank
much.
you very
Thank you.
All right, take care. Okay, so we'll get started with the panel discussion. Again, like I said, excuse me. Again, like I said earlier, this panel is always a featured part of Disability Awareness Day. It gives students with disabilities and those without too, if they want to share, but a chance to share their perspective, their story, and the impact their disability has had on their education, how to be advocates, and more. So before we get started, I want to give a lot of credit and recognition to those with the courage to sit on a panel today. I don't care if we're talking about movies and sports, it's still hard to be vulnerable and get in front of an audience and share your thoughts and your opinions, let alone when you're talking about vulnerable subjects like your personality and disabilities. So I give these students a lot of credit. It takes a lot of courage. And it's an important part of Disability Awareness Day, and always a part that I remember and hopefully our audience remembers. So we'll go ahead and get organized. Our panel, I think we're going to spotlight as we go through, but I'll be the moderator. I'll ask the questions, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but on the panel we have Esley Ramos, Emily Saldivar, Mary Kate Zabiri, Juan Zavala, and Andrea Meaves. Did anybody I say there, are they not here? If anybody wants to chime on, just so I know who's here.
I thought I was going to be on it too. Like I talked to Esley about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like I didn't get a chance to fill out the paperwork, but she said she'd do it for me because I couldn't access it, but hopefully
No, that's
no big
okay.
deal.
Can you name the people again?
So we have Esley Ramos, Emily Saldivar, Mary Kate Zabiri.
Zabarek.
Zabarek. Sorry, that was a tough one.
Yes.
That's a tough one for me. Juan Zavala, Andrea Meaves, and Victor Bradley.
Oh, by the way, it's me, Wiz.
Did you say constant fans?
Oh yeah, we have Constance as well.
Okay.
I think I was looking at it in an early form. Is Constance on? Hi, Constance.
Oh, never mind.
All right. So is there anybody we're missing before we get started? I haven't seen Juan. Is Juan on?
I don't think so.
Okay. We'll give him a minute, but not a big deal. But so we have Constance, Victor, Andrea, Mary Kate, Emily, and Esley.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is the actual, I'm on my phone because I couldn't log on from, since I got the text message via my phone, I couldn't log on to my laptop. I would prefer to do it on the laptop. What is the, like, it says I need a ID.
Yeah, so I can provide that meeting ID for you. I'll give you the number here.
Okay, let me see, continue on browser. Okay, okay. I'm, where did it go? So go to new meeting. No, go to, okay, I can take the number down, I'm sorry.
Okay. The conference ID is 233
233
653
653
445.
445.
And I can also send you, if you have a JJC email, I can send you the link as well.
Yeah.
Wait, what is this for?
This is for the panel discussion, Andrea.
Oh yeah, can you send me a link of the questions as well?
Oh, no, that's just so Constance can sign on to the laptop. You're already signed in, so you're good to go.
Oh, okay.
I can email you the list of questions.
All right, thank you. And when I sign off, is it just closing the meeting?
Yep. When you have to go, you could just sign off.
Oh, okay.
You could just hit that leave button.
All right, thanks.
Couldn't join this team with that code. Okay.
I'm not sure. It might have. She's all probably already on because how did she join the meeting if?
She's on her phone, so she's trying to get on her computer.
Oh, she's trying to do it on her computer, like switch it over. Okay, I understand.
Okay, I just sent you an email with that join information, so you should be able to Go into your JJC email, click on the link, and join on your desktop. It'll prompt you to either transfer to the device.
Okay, this is from Jake Tahini.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you
Perfect.
very much. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Thank you. Click here to join the meeting.
I think the sign language is cool.
Definitely.
And Constance, you look really pretty today.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. I'm on.
All right, just give me 1 second here and we'll get started. Andrea, I don't have the questions right in front of me. I think we sent them to you earlier this week. If you want to look in your email, you can feel free. I know not everybody, it sounds like, wrote out their answers or prepared their answers. So if there's a question that you're not comfortable with, just say skip or pass. You don't have to talk on every question if you would choose not to. So we'll go ahead and get started. How it'll work is I'll ask. We got about 8 questions, so I'll ask a question and then I'll just go down the line. For simplicity's sake, I'll just go down the line of Esley, Emily, Mary Kate, Andrea, Victor, Constance. So each chance you'll have a chance to answer. So we'll go ahead and get started if y'all are ready.
Yeah, because I prepared my questions. I didn't see the email that got sent out last time, so I'm gonna have to check. It's called panel questions. I'll look on my email, but I prepared some in my notes.
Okay.
So it's all out of order because my mind wanders and races. So yeah.
Well, that's okay. If you're comfortable answering on the fly, go ahead and do that. If not, not a big deal if you need to pass.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So our first question is, what is your disability? And we'll start with Esley.
Hello, everyone. So my disability is blindness. My eye condition is called retinitis pigmentosa.
Thank you. Okay, Emily, how about you?
So my disability, I have autism spectrum disorder, which is a complex developmental condition which involves persistent challenges in interaction and speech and nonverbal, well, not in all cases, but nonverbal communication, restrictive, repetitive behavior. And I also have ADHD type 1, which is the inattentive type, which in general, like ADHD means like a person with ADHD has differences like in the brain development and brain activity that affects attention and ability to sit still and self-control.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Mary Kate.
Hello, my name is Mary Kate. I have cerebral palsy. I have a very mild case, which means it's, let me try to explain it. It's not as severe as, it's not like I can't walk. I can walk, I can hold a conversation. It's mostly an, sorry, let me think. It's mostly impairing my movement. So I can walk, but it's very difficult for me to do.
Okay, thank you. All right. Unless Juan signed on, we'll move on to Andrea.
Okay, my name's Andrea. My main disability is autism. I struggle with focusing and remembering things, and learning and social cues, and I get anxiety to speak up. And hard making decisions and hard to understand sometimes, and I get distracted easily. And with thinking literally instead of like somebody says like a joke, and I think, oh, that's like literally like they actually mean that, not like I can't tell when people are like joking sometimes or
Thank you.
sarcastic.
Right. It could be tough to discern between joking and non-joking and when somebody's being serious. Okay, thank you for sharing that. All right, now we have Victor.
Well, I also have autism and ADHD, so I guess it's nice to hear I'm not alone in that regard.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. How about you, Constance?
I'm sorry, it said somebody had muted me, so I didn't think I would be able to unmute. Okay, hello everyone, my name is Constance, and the disability that I have is obsessive compulsive disorder as well as anxiety.
All right, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this next question, which we'll do in the same order. When did you discover you had a disability and how has it impacted your life since? Go ahead, Esley.
I was diagnosed with my blindness when I was about 7, and then when I turned about 14 is when it actually started to get worse. So when I was 7 up until 14, I was actually able to see pretty well. I just needed like things like glasses to see things clearer. I had to sit closer to the board. I believe that was pretty much it. And then when I was 14, it actually started to decrease where I needed to use other things like large print and magnifiers and things like that. And then it started decreasing from there where I use even more things now like a cane and braille and devices that have screen readers on it. That's pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Emily?
I first found out, well, actually before I was diagnosed with autism, when my parents told me when I was around the age of 18 months that's when I started to kind of get the symptoms. Like for example, I would get fixated on different things, such as spinning objects. I was also nonverbal. I did speak all the way up till I was 18 months, and also was kind of regressing in like my behavior, and also I would flap my hands, and also I wanted to be alone like constantly, and I had a really hard time with eye contact. And it wasn't until I was around 3 years old, when I was in preschool, that they did an evaluation on me, and then that's when I found out, or that's when I was diagnosed with autism. But then also when it comes to my ADHD, I wasn't actually diagnosed till this year. So all my life, I did not even know I had ADHD till like, so this is kind of hard because I'm like, I dealt with all that stuff, but I feel like a lot of those symptoms had kind of were like similar to like with autism. So it was like really hard to tell like if those were autism symptoms or ADHD, but it turned out some of it was also ADHD symptoms as well. So it's kind of a relief because honestly, throughout my life, I've struggled so much with other things as well besides autism. So it's kind of nice to hear that, like with the diagnosis and everything. When it comes to autism, I found out until I was like in elementary school, and I was upset about it at first because it was hard for me to comprehend as a kid all the things that were going on. But I knew that it's impacted my life because I've always struggled with talking to people, and I'm really surprised doing even something like this. I never thought. But when I joined the club last year, I actually did this as well, and I think it's really helped me open up about myself. And also, I've always struggled also as well with school and kind of feeling like having a hard time fitting in, but also like being different. And I also have, it has to do with my autism, but having sensory issues as well. Like I don't like bright lights. Sometimes loud noises can bother me, or like certain textures of food and things like that. Like there's certain foods that I just can't eat because like I just can't stand like the texture, the way it feels, or the taste. So I've always been very like those sensory things like that.
Okay, that was a great answer. Thank you for diving so deep onto that one. All right, I think I have Mary Kate next.
Sure. I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at 15 months. I wasn't reaching my milestones that I should have. And the entire thing started when I was born premature by 3 months, and I had to be put on oxygen. And I'm not sure about the specifics of it, but the rate the oxygen was coming through was very fast, very high pressure, and it resulted in a brain bleed, which in turn resulted in the cerebral palsy. And I don't want to say like a variety. Well, I guess I could describe it as a variety of limitations. Mostly with regards to movement, some of it regards to speech as far as processing. I do have a documented learning disability. Some of it is it's sensory and motor skills, fine and gross motor skills. Some of it is texture, like I think it was Emily had mentioned. I can't handle certain textures of foods either. It's hard to swallow. And it's been difficult as far as elementary and high school. It's very difficult in elementary school and high school to get the accommodations that I needed for my disability, especially in high school, because IEP meetings always made me nervous because I was worried about, are they going to put me in regular classes? Am I going to be put in all special ed? I would prefer to be in all special ed, and I've dealt with some incidences of ableism, and I've sometimes been called lazy to, in front of my parents by the school administrators. So it was really difficult. And it's still impacting me to this day in college, although college is actually easier in terms of getting accommodations.
Wow, that's interesting. Usually it's the opposite, that once you get into college and have to really advocate for yourself and come up with those accommodations. So that's an interesting experience you've had. All right.
Yeah, I think also it was difficult in high school because I don't think they really understood a mild case of having cerebral palsy, because I feel like they were used to severe cases where they weren't able to talk. They were a person was in a wheelchair. They weren't able to talk. It was like 24/7 care. That's not my case. That's not the case that I have. And I think it was difficult for them to understand. She's not making it up. She can just do more than someone who has a severe disability.
Right.
It's always that middle ground, which is really hard to achieve sometimes.
That is. And I'm sure Disability Services would appreciate your endorsement of saying it's been a lot easier in college. So shout out to Disability Services.
Absolutely. Yes. Shout out to Disability Services. Yes.
Great. Okay. Victor, you're up. Let me know if you need to repeat the question or if you need me to.
I have them. I have them all listed on a Google Doc, so
okay.
Hopefully they won't be necessary. I was diagnosed when I was 4, and I've been in alternative classes a lot of my life. I guess once I got to high school and college, I started going to non-disabled classes, if that's how you term it. But it's definitely made it hard to make and maintain friendships because I think there's a lot of factors going on here. One thing, I have autism. That's not something that comes naturally to me. For another thing, I think a lot of classes that you have don't really. I mean, I'm very I have a genius level IQ, and a lot of people don't seem to know what to do with me. So I don't really think I got a lot of help from a lot of these classes. They just sort of cater to the people who were more profoundly disabled, and I was just there and didn't really get any assistance. And then there's also the fact that a lot of my peers also had some issues with that. So it was very difficult to make and maintain any sort of real long-term friendships.
Sure. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I should say I'm glad that we have multiple members of this panel that have autism, because there's a common misconception that everybody who has autism has similar symptoms, or everybody who has autism is great at math, or everybody who has autism has trouble with textures and sounds. But that's not the case. With autism is such a wide spectrum that symptoms vary. In Victor's case, he has really high intelligence and it's affected elsewhere. And in Emily's case, it's affected her with communicating, talking, being comfortable, sharing things, and then it alters person to person. So I'm really glad to represent that wide scope of autism, as I think that's really an important distinction to make.
You mind if I just say a little bit more too?
Yeah, absolutely.
That and the ADHD has definitely like made it hard with focusing in class. I'm sure a lot of people understand that in general, because lectures can be boring, but like I just like, I don't know, like lecture format doesn't work for me. I need to just read it in front of me. That's the learning style that works for me. I also feel like it's significantly set me back in terms of like relationships, independence, and achievements. And this has led to depression at times.
Sure.
And the genius level IQ is kind of a curse in that situation, because I can see clearly what other people have and I want it and I don't know how to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these like relationships, friendships, I don't know how to get that stuff. And, I get the feeling that a lot of people I went to school with, they're just, oblivious and better off for it because they don't know what they're missing. So they're not unhappy they don't have it, if that makes sense.
Right. Like an ignorance is bliss kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you for sharing. That's definitely a challenge. I'm glad that you're speaking about it, because I'm sure you're not alone. I think I missed Andrea. Andrea, when were you diagnosed and how has it impacted your life since?
Okay. I wrote this down in my notes. Hold on, let me get to it. Okay, I found out in 3rd grade and I was in smaller classes and I got accommodations. So I would rock back and forth and having hard time with eye contact and having my mood stable. And from my OCD, having tics that I can't control. This was hard making friends, and sometimes I feel like people would judge me for having a disability and textures for me. Scared to be in front of a whole crowd of people. And social cues and speaking up and also getting distracted and trying to like focus in class. And sometimes I struggle by focusing and I just get distracted and my mind is wandering and I'm just like here and there, and then I get lost and I try to participate, but then I get scared to be in a whole crowd just speaking up. So I'm surprised I'm doing this now, because like when I've tried out for things before, and I get nervous, I tend to get my face gets red, and then I like just panic, and then I don't know what to do when I say the wrong thing, and then with communication I struggle with to go up to people and just be like hi and introduce myself, because it's hard to make friends for me, and that's why I get so nervous and uncomfortable in situations.
Well, you're doing a great job today. You're really doing a great job explaining your thoughts and explaining what goes on in your head when you have some of these challenges or these struggles in the classroom, because nobody knows what goes on in somebody else's head unless you're brave enough to get up and talk about it and be vulnerable. So kudos to you.
Because I took some classes that were not special ed classes, and it was hard, and I passed. I took a Spanish class and a art class, but I passed for a Spanish class and a C, and I didn't get low. But I think since I was in choir for 7 years, I knew how to sing, but the part was that I struggled with was the notes, like how to write them out, and learning different things and trying to play instruments was hard for me to learn due to my learning disability.
Yeah, so there are just different aspects that are more difficult to learn in the grand scheme of things. It's not like everything is hard to learn and everything's hard to pick up, but you might have strengths where you can hear the music and understand it, but you have trouble putting it down on paper. So thank you for sharing. Constance?
On the video. Okay, perfect. The question is, at what point were you diagnosed?
Yep.
And then what was the question thereafter?
And how has it impacted your life since?
Okay. Well, mine is a little different from the other participants. I was diagnosed when I was probably I think it was either 19 or 20. I was in the military. And, I was diagnosed then. It was quite a shock for me. I mean, I knew when I was younger that I struggled, with being around people and, being in social settings. I just didn't know what the reasoning was. So it was kind of, where would I want to look for? I was grateful for the diagnosis, but since I was older, it was very difficult to accept it. So it took me years to really believe that I had something wrong, and so and that affected me because my ability to get the proper assistance, I kind of was getting in my own way because I just felt, well, if you just work harder, or, because I became accustomed to that, working harder, working through it. Therefore, like I said, I did think there was something wrong, but I just figured, well, you just work harder, you keep working harder. So I think I became fixated on working harder to the point when it wasn't diagnostic, I was like, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. I just work harder than I'm already working harder. But eventually it gets exhausting and you come to terms and you realize, okay, well, maybe if I do embrace this, I may be able to get assistance and I don't have to work as hard. And then I don't have to forego relationships, friendships, because of all the additional work that I have to do on the personal end of just making it.
Right. Well said. And I'm glad you brought that up because I've heard of a lot of cases where adults get diagnosed with their disability later on in life. So in your case, 19, 20, even later than that, adults in their 40s and 50s getting diagnosed with something. And the thing that comes to my mind is what impact could that have made if you got that diagnosis at 4 or 5 years old? Does that change your entire education? Does that change your scope of what you're interested in and what you're good at? So I'm glad you're sharing. I'm glad you got the diagnosis and have embraced it. But I always wonder what change that could have made if you got it as a younger person and were able to kind of get the accommodations you deserved and required to do well in education and socially.
Of course, I think it would definitely have made a difference because then you don't have that personal, resistance to someone, you're already developed as an individual personality wise. So someone coming in from the outside saying, according to this DSM-4, it's like, well, I don't know if your book can tell me about me. So now you're more resistant and working hard. So it creates just a lot of tension within yourself, a lot of anger when dealing with others because you expect that they know the struggle that you're going through, but nobody knows. And so I think I think early diagnosis is definitely better, I would say, because you don't have that resistance to prove, now I'm going to prove them wrong when you know that there are some issues. So
very good. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to this next question. What is one thing that you have to constantly express when discussing your disability? Ashley, you go ahead and start.
Okay. The main thing I have to express is how much I can see, since blindness or visual impairment is a spectrum. Like just because one person that has a visual impairment may see a little bit, the next one may not, or they may even see a little bit more. Like it's a spectrum, so I constantly have to explain how much I see, and also like when I do see something, like for example, depending on the brightness of the room or outside, I may see something one day that I may not see another day just because it's gloomy outside or it's darker in the room, or even dark outside. Like I have to constantly explain, just because people are curious or they get kind of confused, because I say that I'm legally blind because I'm considered blind because I can see on the peripheral, so I can see on the sides of my eyes. I can't see in the center. Even though I'm looking straight right now, I can't even see anything in front of me. Um, but like there's just moments where I can see movement, or I can see something, someone's shirt, or I can even tell that they were smiling or something. It's very like strange sometimes, because like I even get surprised myself when I can see something. It's just depending on the lighting and what I'm focusing on as well. Like if I'm actually like trying to pay attention to what's around me, but sometimes I do kind of like try to not focus as so much at once as well, because it starts to hurt my eyes. Um, but yeah, I would say that's the main thing, like how much I can see, and when I can see something, why was I able to see it? And it's definitely something I don't mind describing. I actually like when people ask, and I actually kind of find it funny as well when people get confused. Like I have people that joke with me all the time saying like, you just pretend you can't see. Like, um, how did you see that? Like you're just pretending. And I find that kind of cool sometimes. Like it's like a little game, because like I said, even sometimes I get surprised when I can see something. It just depends on the brightness and what I'm focusing on. um I guess the other thing is, uh, when I do something, sometimes having to explain how I was able to do that is another main thing that I explain.
Hmm. Well,
Yes.
thank you for sharing. I'm glad that you made the statement about your vision being. So I don't know what it's obviously I don't know what it's like to be blind or visually impaired, but oftentimes I think it's easy to think that visual impairments, you just see nothing but dark, like you have your eyes closed, like an able-bodied person would just have their eyes closed. But that's not the case, depending on the brightness. And I remember you talking about your trip to Florida. You were able to see some of where were you at, like the like a gator show or something? You were able to see
Yeah,
a
I
little
was
bit.
at this place called Gatorland. The sun over there was just so much brighter for some reason, so I was able to see a lot more. I had an amazing moment where I was able to see my family members and stuff, and even my siblings who are all younger than me. I was able to see them after like so many years, so it was
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Like when I get those moments, it's always amazing to me. But yeah, it was something about the sun, so that's why I'm really grateful that I can use the little bit of sight to still be able to see, but also see it in other ways.
Sure. Okay, Emily, what do you have to share?
So I want to say, I know you said this, Patrick, earlier, but with autism having a spectrum, meaning everyone has a different, like, that's something I try to emphasize when I try to talk to people about autism, especially because I feel like people have like that stereotype of what autism looks like, but it's not always the case. Everyone's going to get it differently, and that's why I think too that's what makes autism unique. And I know too that there's been a little bit of controversy. I feel like I need to do my research more, but I've done a little bit research like about with autism and the puzzle piece. There's been a little bit of controversy with that, especially with like the Autism Speaks organization, that it's actually kind of more like, I feel like I don't have to do my research, but this is something I'd want to do in the club, like do a presentation about kind of like ableism with Autism Speaks, but also I feel like more so many autistic people are using more so the infinity symbol, which kind of has like a rainbow of like different colors. representing more so the spectrum than the puzzle piece. It's more just like connecting the pieces. Like there's an empty piece of someone. And I feel like I don't like that message behind the puzzle piece. And I feel like the infinity symbol actually represents autism more. And also, as well as kind of something I want to emphasize, like people like with the April with Autism Awareness Month, instead many like autistic people, I've seen a lot of autistic YouTubers or like people on the media like using more so Autism Acceptance Month, which I feel like that's a better way than saying awareness. I feel like acceptance is more so accepting yourself for who you are. And I think that's something that means a lot, especially for people on the spectrum, because throughout my life, I've just like, I've always told myself I never wanted to have, like, why was I born like this? Why did I have to have a disability? Why of all the people it had to be me and all this? And then, of course, like, it wasn't until like this year where I truly accepted myself for who I am. It took me that long, all my life, but I think this is the club or that really helped. I'll talk more about this later in the other questions, but I'll explain something else right now. So when it comes to my ADHD, like if people don't know ADHD, a lot of people may think, oh, it's only hyperactivity or like impulsiveness, but in reality, there's actually 3 different types. So usually when you go get your diagnosis, they'll usually put you under a type or category. So type 1, the one that I have is inattentive, which is more so the inability to concentrate and having a hard time focusing and things like that. And for that, I know with ADHD, they do have different medication, which I am on a medication. I've been on it for a few months now, ever since I got the diagnosis. I feel like I still really haven't seen change because I still feel like I struggle, or sometimes I'll forget to take medicine on days. I just have like really bad memory sometimes. Like sometimes I forget to do things, but also to I'll continue with type 2, which is hyperactivity / impulsiveness, and then type 3 is actually a combination between type 1 and type 2. And also something I want to emphasize a lot is ADHD affects all ethnic and social economic groups. And I kind of did a presentation this past year with the club about autism, and I did explain a lot about this with girls and people of color end up getting less likely are less likely to receive a diagnosis. And I think that I'm grateful that I was able to receive my diagnosis. I'm a Latina, so I think too in our culture disabilities are not talked about as much. And I think too, like especially with minorities in general, like I feel like, or like even girls or women as well, because we tend to actually not get diagnosed till later on, especially with girls on the spectrum, and usually more likely have less severe symptoms than compared to boys. But for me, I had more obvious symptoms, but a lot of girls don't. So it's really hard for us to get that help that we need. We need to start changing this. We can't, like, I feel like I've seen a lot of videos where a lot of girls end up getting diagnosed for other things, but not actually autism. Like sometimes they might be mistaken for anxiety or depression or other mental health disorders and things like that, but actually it may actually be autism. And also this also kind of is the same thing with ADHD as well. So I think we do need to change the subject because it is very important that we talk about these issues, because so that less people are getting diagnosed at a later age and that people can get diagnosed when they're young, because it can actually cause damage. Like for me, if I found out I had ADHD when I was younger, I think it would have saved me a lot. And I think if only I knew that years ago, or when I was around the same age that I got my autism diagnosis, I think that would have truly changed everything. So I think too that we need to start talking about this things like that and bringing awareness. This is what this panel is all about, bringing awareness about other disabilities.
Great points, Emily. And we've come a long way as a society, but we still have a long way to go. So we can't ignore the progress we've made, but we also can't ignore that we're not all the way there yet. And points like you're making are why. Mary Kate, go ahead.
Sure. I'm actually going to kind of piggyback off of Emily and Ashley's points. They made really good points. disabilities are a spectrum in general. There are tons of, tons of points. And bringing it to my disability, I have to explain a lot about my disability and multiple points. Like Esley, I am visually impaired as well. I'm nearsighted, so I have to wear my glasses to see far distances. Sometimes I can't see a sign until I'm walking right by it. And I remember going to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor would tell me, okay, take off your glasses and then put the shade on your left eye and tell me what you see with your right eye. And I said, I can't see anything. And they're like, really? I said, yeah, I can't see anything. And they're like, oh, okay. So I'm actually blind in one eye. And then as far as my cerebral palsy, it's tough to explain that I can walk. I think one of the biggest misconceptions of cerebral palsy is, people who have cerebral palsy can't walk. That's not the case. Some people with cerebral palsy, like the mild case with my case, can walk and they want to walk. It's just very difficult to do. And sometimes if I'm walking long distances, I have to use a wheelchair. And I have gotten looks where I've gotten out of the wheelchair and people give me these looks and I hear them mutter under the breath, why is she using a wheelchair? She can walk. I just can't walk long distances and it's physically painful. And then similar to Emily's point, it's having a disability is a lifelong thing. And I think the most common misconception about disabilities is that, oh, you're born with it. You're just born with it. The biggest thing about disabilities is that you can join the disability minority group at any time, whether it be an accident or a surgery gone wrong, or again, with some of us who are just born with it. And I feel like there's so much to explain where I get frustrated. It's like, I shouldn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
That it can get frustrating at times. And I've sometimes been accused of, like with the wheelchairs, people ask, oh my gosh, is she faking it? Is it real? It's real, but it's that tough middle ground. I have a disability, so I'm not fully able-bodied, but at the same time, I don't need 24-hour care. It's difficult.
I think oftentimes the public and society fail to recognize nuance. So when you talk about disability and we go back to visible versus invisible disabilities, you cannot always see somebody's disability. That does not make it not true, and that it does still impact your life, and you can't walk long distances, and you have every right to park in handicapped spots and have the placard and use a wheelchair. Where I think I would like to see society get to is be more informed and understanding that you're not always going to see somebody's disability and they don't have to explain it to you. You're not the jury here. You're not the decider on who has a disability and what it is. That's not your decision to make. So I wish people, instead of making comments and digs and asking, why does that person need a wheelchair? I wish they would take a second and think, okay, maybe I don't see their disability. I think that's so important. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Mary Kay.
Yeah, and then I also do like, I think it was Emily that brought it up. I do think there should be, I guess I can call it a renaming, where it's instead of like Disability Awareness Month or Autism Awareness Month, it should be, Disability Acceptance Month, Autism Acceptance Month. We learn to, okay, yes, we're aware of it, but we accept you for it.
Yeah, language is important. And I think acceptance and inclusion, those are all things we're striving for. So I totally get changing that from awareness to acceptance. Okay. All right, Victor, do you have anything to share on that question?
Yeah, I think I have to always explain like that, or maybe others have explained to me that I have a disability at all. Like a lot of people see that I'm like smart and I don't have a visible disability, so they just assume, oh, he's not disabled, and then it makes it hard to deal with because when it manifests itself, no one ever cuts me any breaks. They never give me any help when I fall short, and it's just it's all because they don't see a problem, and
Mhm.
exclusion's also an issue. Like, people don't see me as disabled, so again, they don't cut me any breaks. They just view me as weird, and they shut me out a lot of the time. I have to say, like, there's this guy on YouTube that you definitely should check out if you want to see more. Like, it's Asperger's from the Inside, and one of his videos is titled "Rejection is the Story of My Life," and that does feel a lot of the case, like what I've had to deal with.
Yeah, it's sad, but I appreciate you sharing.
I also
think
do
this.
need to make one point about
Yeah, go for it.
Autism Speaks
Mhm.
and how bad they are. There's this place called the Judge Rotenberg Center that in Massachusetts that until recently practiced electric shocks more powerful than tasers on people who are like severely disabled. And Autism Speaks promoted them, you know, promoting a group that does electric shocks.
Mhm.
Really great advocacy group there. Do not support them ever.
I appreciate your insight, and it sounds like we all need to do some more research on Autism Speaks and what they're doing. I think before we move on, I think this panel is really a good microcosm of society, specifically disability. We have 6, 7 members up here that are all different. Their disabilities are different. Some of their disabilities are the same, but their experiences are all different. They come from all walks of life. You have different backgrounds, cultures, races, genders, and more, yet they're still impacted by disability. And I forget who mentioned it earlier, but disability affects all groups. There's nobody that's immune from acquiring a disability or being born with one. So it's important to understand that all walks of life are different, and the disabilities and the symptoms can vary so much person to person. All right, Constance. I think. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, my disability has affected me. It's in correlation to what we spoke about earlier about early diagnosis. I think it affects me because, like Mary Kate said, that middle ground. You know, I've taught myself how to push through things or just work extremely harder on things. And I think that it has made it difficult for not only others to see my disability. I think before anybody can see anything within yourself, you have to see it. And I think that I was not seeing it, so I was in a sense blinded myself to the point where others could see things and I was oblivious because I'm like, there's nothing wrong. So it has that has been one of the challenges for me to express my disability, is not just for others, but for me to embrace it myself so that I can, instead of avoiding a situation, telling someone, hey, I was having a hard day, I couldn't do that.
Mhm.
So those are my challenges with it.
Sure. And that's, I'm sure you're not alone in those struggles. And again, we go back to the importance of, first off, early diagnosis, as well as dropping that stigma that when you get diagnosed with a disability, instead of thinking what's wrong with me,
right,
having kind of a different perspective and figuring out how to embrace that, and be open to it, because you have to accept it. A lot of times, as somebody else said today, disabilities are a lifetime thing. So you can either accept it or you cannot and still deal with it. So I think it's important that stigma goes away, that it's not something wrong with you. It's something different about you.
Very true.
Okay. Well, moving on to the next question, and I think Andrea signed off. So I don't mean to be skipping her, but I think she signed off. Just want to make sure that I'm not skipping her on
I'm
any of these.
actually still here.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
right here.
great. I thought you had to leave
Yeah.
early, so go
Oh,
ahead,
no,
Andrea. So if you want to answer, what's something that you have to constantly express when discussing your disability?
What I was gonna. Well, hold on. I get nervous to tell people how I'm feeling, only focusing on one thing, and not being able to learn how to drive. Also, I feel like it's hard to explain it to my friends and how they will react, and I wish I was normal. And most of my friends have disabilities, and I'm used to I used to disability service to go to help me and to counselor. And I don't like taking pills, but I have to. I have impulsive decisions and just act on it and just say what's on my mind. And I was diagnosed with a mood disorder recently last summer. And I have trouble with speaking to people, and ever since I was a baby, I had trouble sleeping. Some people with autism can't speak. I'm higher functioning. I have trouble with patience, and I'm able to use coping skills and being able to get the special needs past the Six Flags, being able to skip the lines. Functioning, I struggle with math, and it makes me, and I tend to be shy. Okay, yeah, that's what I had to say.
Okay, thank you for sharing. All right, so we've got about 10, 15 minutes before we're going to open it up to some Q&A. So I'm going to be selective with some of these last few questions, but we'll start with, how has your disability affected your education? Go ahead, Esley.
For me, my disability has affected my education because, like I mentioned earlier, I went from just having to sit close to the board and using regular print. I believe I did have to start using like dark pens and dark markers. I couldn't see pencil writing that well. And then I started in middle school. They would give me like large prints. So basically, they would print it out in very large print, bigger than the normal print. And then for some reason, I had to use color paper, like paper that was orange or yellow to be exact. Like the contrast was just easier for me to see when the paper was orange and yellow and the print was black, very bold. And I also, from there, I got introduced to Braille because with my eye condition, like I mentioned earlier, retinitis pigmentosa, it's meant to decrease the older you get. It doesn't always happen. And what I was told is most people end up with some form of vision, they never lose it completely. But I was learning Braille at the same time I was using a white cane, or I was learning how to use a white cane. Um, so I was learning all that during like middle school and high school. So having to learn a new world, like seeing seeing things in a different way, literally, I had to use Braille. I got introduced to Braille in middle school, and then using computer with screen readers that I had to, when I was learning those Braille, when I was learning Braille and using the computers with the screen readers, I had to go with a different teacher called a vision itinerant. They're specialized in teaching people who are blind and visually impaired. So I had to do that along with going to my classes. I was put in a couple special education classes, but I was also put in the regular ed classes. So having to juggle all that, it was challenging because I was also learning in school, but I was learning how much like I could see and having to juggle everything and also being able to um, still participate in class, but having to learn everything. So it was just very challenging and it made it very difficult to make friends. I believe I only had a couple friends and none of them I don't talk to this day, but I made maybe a couple friends because I was always getting pulled out of class. Along with that, I didn't even mention I was diagnosed with a hearing impairment that's improved now. So I was getting pulled out for taking tests for that. And so it just impacted me in various ways with having to learn in the mainstream education, along with like learning the other things as well with my accommodations. And to this day, like everything that I learned was from middle school and high school with the technology and everything. And it could still be difficult at times because I have to use the different devices and it sometimes can take longer to complete tests and complete assignments. and just having to have people repeat things sometimes just because I have to process everything and listen to everything. So it can be challenging, and that's pretty much how it's affected me.
Sure, thank you. Emily, what do you have?
So I think I've also had my struggles in school as well. Throughout my life, when I was in preschool, I actually was in all autism special class. And then eventually, as I made progress, they put me in a general ed class. But then I still had support from like a special, like a teacher assistant. And then when I went to elementary school, I was in mostly general ed classes, but sometimes I would get pulled out like for special ed and then also like for speech therapy and social group, like working with the social worker. So that was throughout elementary school. And then throughout middle school, it was the same thing. With working with a social worker, having speech, but also in general classes. But the only special ed class I was ever in throughout my time in school was for math. And in sixth grade, I was actually in an all like a regular gen ed class, but then I was struggling. My grade wasn't that great, and then they put me in.
I think you accidentally hit mute there.
Sorry, I was saying about the math class in sixth grade, and then I was put into a smaller like a special ed class, and I think that helped me a lot. And then in high school, I was in all mostly gen ed classes except for math. But also too, in school, I've always had a hard time communicating with others. I always used to dread group work, especially when I did not know anyone, and it'd be so awkward, especially the teacher just pairs you up with someone you don't even want to work with, but you still have to anyway. And this was a struggle for me. And also processing information, I had a harder time processing. Sometimes I would say like, "Oh, I'm so dumb," or why can I understand it quicker like everyone else, or things like that. And then also feeling misunderstood by teachers. And I feel like I didn't start thinking about this stuff till recently, but I was starting to look back and I'm like, a lot of these teachers did not understand me, even the special ed teachers. And I'm gonna say that I feel like I don't know if there was, I don't know because it wasn't like directly said to me, but why I feel I had like this feeling inside of me that I feel like there probably was ableism going on. And especially for me, people may not think like I have a disability because it doesn't look like it, but I do. It's more of a invisible disability, and that's where my struggles were. And I did not like those IEP meetings either. They were dreadful. And if anyone does not know what IEP means, it's individualized education plan. So it's basically given to students K through 12, like for getting accommodations for their disability. And I used to dread the meetings. It wasn't until like eighth grade when I was able to start going to them, because that's usually when the students can start going to the meetings. But it was hard because every teacher would say, "You need to talk more. You're too quiet," and all this. And I'm like, I understand I'm quiet, but it's part of my disability. And I used to hate forced to socialize with people. And I'm not saying socializing is bad, but I'm saying if it's like too forced, then I'm gonna feel overwhelmed. And that's the thing. I felt like a lot of these teachers didn't understand, like, oh, it has to do with me. I'd like for her to talk more. Yeah, I get it, but you guys just don't get it because you guys don't have disabilities. You guys don't know what it's like. I'm not saying all teachers were like that. I actually had one teacher, I actually did back in high school, like my math teacher for senior year, and I felt like she was probably one of the only teachers that truly understood me. Like she wasn't like that forceful person. She would not say it in a way that other teachers would, especially the gen ed teachers sometimes wouldn't get it, but there were some teachers that were actually nice, but a lot of them just didn't understand. And a lot of them are not taught how to deal with kids with disabilities, even sometimes the special ed teachers too. So that's why I'm like, we need to kind of change our education system to kind of better fit for people with disabilities, because it's just really irritating. Like looking back, I'm like, how did I not realize this stuff back then? All this stuff, not till now where I started thinking about it. But yeah, and also transitioning to college, I feel like it wasn't until college where I finally felt understood. Just like how with Mary Kate said, I feel like in college is so much better because they don't judge you how they did in those IEP meetings. That's why I felt so judged. But now it's like they actually, like, the disability services actually cares for you. They're going to get your accommodations. And the thing is, your professors don't know what your disability is. Usually with a note of accommodation, they usually just know you have a disability, but they're not allowed to ask what disability you have, and still getting your accommodations, which I think is very important. I feel like sometimes I like it better than having a case manager, kind of like that micromanaging, which I did not like that. So I think having that support has really meant a lot.
Sure.
And that's why I feel like I like college so much better. That independence that I finally wanted for so long. And so yeah.
That's great. And another shout out to Disability Services. So they're doing a good job over there. It sounds like we need to educate our educators a little bit, right? We need to get everybody involved in this conversation. And a lot of the time that is teachers and professors that they don't know what they don't know. It's not that they necessarily have these malicious intent, but they don't understand the full scope of disability and how it impacts people differently. I also know for a fact you're not alone in dreading group work. That's always tough in the classroom, those group projects. All right, Mary Kate.
Okay, so my disability definitely affects my education even still to this day. Emily made a very good point about IEPs and accommodations. It definitely does help having accommodations and IEPs. And similar to Emily's point, the micromanagement in elementary school and high school and being pulled out of class. I had been pulled out of class for occupational therapy and physical therapy. And it's like, okay, I, go do my thing and, for therapy. And then I come back and then it's like, I still notice all the stares and all the whispers, like, where did she go? She was missing. And it's like, well, I was just therapy. I mean, I myself thought it wasn't a big deal, but then apparently for everybody else, it's like, oh, where did she go? She was missing. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes in elementary school, I had to almost lie in the prone position on, I don't know if it was a mat or like an incline. And everybody would always want to sit by me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then I realized, oh, they just want to sit by me because I have the incline. No, she doesn't have to sit like we do. And not realizing, I had that for a reason. I have to do this for a reason. I'm not doing it just for myself.
Right. Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, it's that misconception. And I feel like there's, to Emily's point, like she said, there's a lot of misconception in education because I feel education has a one size fits all approach. Mm-hmm. Well, that one size fits all doesn't work with disabilities.
That's a great point.
Yes, so.
One size fits all is not an approach to education regardless of ability or disability.
Yes.
Okay, so we, all right, moving on to Andrea. What would you say, how has your disability affected your education?
Oh, okay. Let me see. I was typing something. Where is that? Wait.
If you'd like, we could skip ahead to Victor and get you after.
Oh, wait, I have it now. Having to use a computer to type my notes, being able to use a calculator and type some math, and type in my notes to remember, also being able to have my tests read to me and recording lectures. Scared to talk to higher authority. It was hard to learn online. I am a more visual learner, so I had to wait to go back into person to learn, face to face.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Our education and learning has been so different the past year plus due to the coronavirus, and
yes, that was
a lot of our education has shifted towards that online platforms, and that makes things more difficult. Again, regardless of disability, having to figure out and pivot to an online class when you're not used to that, or in a sudden change, that's not easy. So education has had other challenges outside of our control the past year plus. So I'm glad you
Oh
brought
yeah,
that to
as you
light.
said that, I agree because with my autism, when I know that I have a set schedule and it's hard when something changes and I'm like, oh no, now I have to do all this change and it tends me to panic and I'm like, and I freak out and I'm like, because I'm not used to change and it's like I'm just focused on what the other regular schedule time is.
Right. That's very hard. All right, Victor. Looks like your mic is muted if you're talking. I can't tell. All right, Constance, why don't you hop on, and then if Victor joins, we'll get to him after.
Sure. My disability affecting my schooling. I think the way that it's affected my schooling is at first I felt guilty about the accommodations because I felt like not that it was cheating, you know, when I would get the extended test taking time or, you know, being able to take tests in a different location than others, I would feel, because of the way I thought about it, like I was getting a leg up.
Mm-hmm.
But once I began to use them because I actually needed them, that helped me realize, well, it's not a leg up. It's actually just having the playing field level for you.
Right.
And so that has been a huge, that has made a huge impact on my academic success because I no longer look at it like a, what do you call it? A leg up. I look at it as an accommodation that helps me to be able to do my work on the same level as someone who doesn't need the accommodation. So it just makes everything level. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's not giving me a leg up. So again, that had to do with my own way of thinking and being diagnosed later in life. You
Sure.
know, a lot of isms that I had to reteach myself as well as learn what a disability is and how it affects me.
For sure. And you didn't have a leg up. You were just getting brought up to the table. You were below, and you were getting brought up. It's an equity thing. You were being brought up to the table. You weren't going superseding the other people at the table. You were just being brought up to equal.
Yes, yes. And I think if I looked at it like that, I think I would have had a different perspective. But as I progress, I'm beginning to see it like that. And I'm no longer feeling like, you know, oh, well, I don't need those accommodations. I make sure I email professors and get the resource and utilize the resources like going to the disability service office because those things do help me. So
Sure.
no longer am I like, oh, no, I don't want to have to do that. So it's very helpful.
Good points.
Yes,
okay,
thank you.
we're running close on time, so I'm going to kind of combine.
Well, I could I
Oh,
still
sorry,
do
Victor.
this one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. I forgot that we missed you.
And a delivery man came right as you were addressing me, so there's not much I could do.
That's okay.
I'd say it's made my education a lot harder. As I said, a fair chunk of my life's been in alternative schools and classrooms, and as Mary Kate said, they also have that one size fits all approach, and a lot of times they cater to the people that have are more profoundly affected by their disability. So it's sort of like with people like me, I'm kind of just I don't get much attention. I don't really learn a lot.
Mm-hmm. Kind of fall through the cracks a little bit.
Yeah. And it's also frustrating because even when I was in some public classes when I was in high school and whatnot, but I noticed that they kind of just isolated the disabled community from the rest of the people there. Like the disabled people had their own classes, their own gym. They were just completely isolated, so there was no interaction, and it made making like any sort of relationship very difficult because you were never around those people.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't get any exposure too, so they didn't learn anything either.
Yeah,
Another problem I have is that a lot of these special ed classes use this, I don't know, I think it's ABA, but whatever it is, they basically have this control problem where they basically just expect you to fall in line and do what they say, and if you dissent, they punish you. like they give you warnings, they give you like timeouts and stuff, and oftentimes they don't even explain what you did wrong or why it's a problem or whatever. So I don't know what the heck that's all about, but that's a major problem, and it's annoying because it's like you're an adult almost and you're being treated like you're a young kid.
Mm-hmm. And that's a common frustration amongst people with disabilities, is getting talked down to and talk like you're a child when you're not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, and then in college, that wasn't as bad. Like I went to classes with everyone else, but I felt excluded by people. Sometimes there was one time they laughed at my expense. There were times they kicked me out of a group project, and then the professor sided with them instead of saying that's just unacceptable. You can't do that, and expected me to do the whole group project on my own. By the way, really fair stuff.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
You know, just keeping up with the normal workload of 14 hours was ridiculously stressful to the point where, like, there were times I'd lose sleep because my head felt like it was going to explode and I just couldn't even relax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay, so like I said, we're close on time, so I'm going to combine these last two questions. So we're going to talk about how accessible is the public in your opinion? Where can society improve? Then also, what is one message you would like to say to those in attendance today? And then we'll have a few minutes for any questions that come up from audience members. Esley, go ahead.
I would say there are many ways that the public society can improve because in terms of my disability, the world is sighted as it is. Like everything is focused on sight. Everyone's using their sight all the time. So trying to input different accommodations in many things that go on, like events or like conferences and everything, trying to make sure you accommodate like for people who may not be able to see and other disabilities as well. But yeah, I would say that'd be one of the main parts because the world is so divided. Like trying to remember that not everyone has the ability to see. Um, because like I said, I pretty much feel like I had to learn to see in a new way because the world is so sighted. Like you so used to using their eyes and everything so focused on looks and the way people look and um, just everything's just focused on sighted basically on using your sight. So like just thinking of ways to accommodate for people who may not be able to see, not even in terms of blindness. Like it may just be a day where someone doesn't have their glasses on and their eyes hurt or something like that. Just trying to accommodate for people who can't see.
Mm-hmm.
And then the message I would say to everyone in the audience today is uh, personally from me, thank you for being here. It's been a great event so far. I look forward to the rest of it. But thank you for being here. And by you being here now, you hopefully learned something that you could take with you and use it and remember that, you know, as you can see from today, we're all people just like you. Um, I always say this, but um, for those of us with disabilities, we're all people just like you, and we have the way I say it is just we have the ability to do things differently, but overall we're people just like you. So
Thank you,
remember that.
Esley. Great points all around. Emily, go ahead.
So I would say that when it comes to accessibility, I think for the most part there is, like, for example, like handicap parking, handicap stalls, elevators, and ramps. But I still think besides that, there still needs to be more. And I feel like too, this world is not built for people with disabilities, especially because I feel like we had to navigate more so than neurotypical people, for example. And also, it's quite a challenge, not just for visible, but also invisible as well, making it more accessible for both. And I don't know if you guys mentioned about what's going on in the A building, like how they're trying to fix the braille and everything, because
Oh yeah.
to specify the different rooms and what room it is, because I know Esley too has talked about this before, and I think too there needs to be change in all different buildings, all different public buildings, even on the outside as well. And also having places, I know too, for me, like having sensory issues, sometimes bright lights can really hurt my eyes. And I feel like sometimes people don't get it because they might think, oh, you're just over exaggerating. Why are you faking it? All this. It's like, I'm not faking it. Just because I looks like I don't doesn't mean, like, I actually do feel it. And it's hard because sometimes I'm not saying my family's like, ableist or anything, but I'm just saying like sometimes like they might think I'm over exaggerating on things, but I'm actually not. This is how I feel. Loud noises bother me. I don't like bright lights. But I know too, in like Esley's case, I know that she might need more bright lights for her, like in order to see, but I know it differs for people with disabilities, whether if it's a visual impairment or whether if it's sensory, has to do with sensory, or also like when it comes to loud noises, especially to like parties or big events, sometimes that can be a little bit overwhelming. And if you guys haven't heard about like what sensory overload is, so sensory overload is kind of more so like too much is going on. Like for example, like too much loud noise, too much bright lights, or you can't stand the texture of your food or something, just like using all the sensory, but it's like too much of it. So I think that's sometimes too a problem that people with autism tend to have to deal with on a daily basis. But also too, I think also a message that I have for everyone here, thank you so much for coming today. It's really appreciated that you took out your time of your day to actually learn about disabilities, and thank you everyone.
Thank you, Emily. I'm really glad that you mentioned the A building. This has been a club initiative championed by Esley, who noticed in the A building, when you read the Braille under the classrooms, it may say the classroom number, but that doesn't necessarily show where it is or what building it's in or what that classroom does. So expanding that Braille is an advocacy project led by Disability Awareness Club. And I give a lot of credit because that's what we're here for. That's what the club and disability services, that's what it's all about, is finding things that we can improve upon and making more accessible. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Emily. Kudos to Esley for seeing through that. And I'm excited to share once it's up to date. Okay, we have a couple more before we move. Yeah, before we move on to Adam's presentation, I just want to let, okay, Mary Kate, go ahead.
So what was the first question? I didn't catch it.
So I kind of combined the last two and for time's
Yeah,
sake.
the first
So
part.
it's how accessible is the public in your opinion, and where can society improve? And what is one message you would like to say to those in attendance today?
Okay, so as far as accessibility, it's like you had said earlier, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. I love the fact that they're addressing the Braille in A building. I definitely think, I can't remember where I had seen it, but it was something about an article about buildings with open floor plans. Everything is open. There's no 1 or 2 levels. There's a very easy way to get from point A to point B in a building with ramps, with open floor plans, with a lot of space. And I think that should be the norm for everyone, whether abled or disabled. I think that should be the norm as far as just as far as accessibility. And then I also think there should be more attention brought to invisible disabilities, as far as, like Esley had said, visual impairment, processing, learning disabilities. I definitely think there should be more done on that. And then as far as a message for everyone, I would say thank you to the panelists who came out and shared their experiences. I learned a lot. It's it's been a great experience. This is my first time here on for the club. And to those who are watching, thank you for taking the time out to come and learn about all of this. It's a great experience to educate and advocate for all of us to help you spread awareness and just inclusivity. Thank you guys so much for this.
Thanks, Mary Kate. All right, we have
Thank
just
you.
a couple more, and then we'll be moving on. Andrea, what do you have to say?
Okay, what's the question again? I forget things really easily. I'm sorry.
That's okay. How accessible is the public in your opinion, and where could it improve? And what's one message you'd like to send to those in attendance today?
Well, this is a hard one. I'm trying to think. Can I pass on this one?
No problem. Sure thing. Okay, Victor, you can touch on both questions, one or the other, whatever you prefer.
I'm going to start with the accessible one. I'd say that the public's not really that accessible because, as I said, like, I felt excluded a lot of the time. And no one really did anything to stop it when it was happening. Like, there was one time I joined a youth group and I was always the last one picked for any of the activities. And that's it. There was like time I tried joining student council in high school, and I know, like, I was one of the 2 people they sat out during a sports event. Was one of the only people who ran for higher officer that didn't get it.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, just in general, I've always had trouble socializing and felt left out of conversations, and nobody seems to notice, and they don't seem to really care when I mention it. In fact, they often go so far as to say, oh, well, you're just not trying hard enough, trying to shift the blame shift. So it's like, oh, it's your fault because you didn't do this. It's like, no, you're leaving me out. It's kind of, you're the one who needs to change, and you're not really having a lot of empathy here, which is just like, come on.
Yeah, so that social inclusion piece is a big component you'd like to see improved upon, especially in the K through 12 arena.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, like even in so-called friend groups, it's annoying too because it's like I don't know of any services to assist with that. Like, there's no advertised services that help you with stuff like that.
That's
true. And I think that society needs to just do a better job of offering that help for those who want things but don't know how to get them. And it also needs to do a better job of educating the non-disabled populace on being more empathetic and understanding versus excluding and ignoring those who are different because they don't understand and they don't feel like making the effort. And victim blaming, like, a lot of times I've been, even my own family, like, I talk about how friends have basically betrayed me and lied to my face, and they're always like, well, what did you do wrong? You should have seen it coming. It's like, no, that's horrible. Why would you say that?
It's hard. I think in general, people need to listen and be more empathetic in general.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's for the message. I'd say don't treat the disabled less than or talk down to them or exclude them, especially not just because they're different. And if someone says they're having trouble with something like being excluded or rejected or asks you for help, take it seriously. And if you can, do something. Like, they're trying to talk to you and confiding in you for a reason. And the last thing they need is to have your betrayal or neglect on top of the initial issue, which, by the way, has not been solved if that's what you choose to do.
Right. Great points all around, Victor. All right, Constance.
Can I say something?
Yep.
I think people, when you tell them, it's hard to understand for them for your disability because they don't experience it like how you do. And then some people see you and they can tell you have a disability and they're like making fun of you for it. Because I have experience with people judging me and making fun of my disability and saying, oh, why don't you drive? And I have to take a bus places and they're like saying, aren't you 21? Why can't you drive? And then my message would be probably, well, that's how it was impacting, but my message would be like that it's good that we're all speaking up and trying to tell how we feel and it's good advice. Now, what I was going to say is, I'm trying to process my thoughts.
That's okay. I think you made a lot of good points there.
Because I lose my train of thought so many times, but that's what I was about to say. But for the message, that it really helps people by telling different stories of each one, and I'm glad that everyone can participate. And thank you for being here and explaining all that and being brave enough to even tell about your stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Andrea.
All right, you're welcome.
All right, Constance, we're close on time here, so finish this out and then we'll pass it over to Adam.
Certainly. I think in terms of accessibility, just like some of the other, the ladies said, I think awareness is great, but I think that we should be able to evolve into acceptance. And then from acceptance, I think that action should happen, that now we can put things in action. A message I would like to say to the audience is thank you for, taking your time to listen to others' stories and to be open to understanding a way of life that is different from yours. And kudos to all the people on the panel for being able to open up and be vulnerable and transparent.
Thank you, Constance. And again, thank you to everybody that served on the panel today. It's always enlightening and important to get these messages and stories out. And it's not an easy thing to do. So kudos to you all. Great job. We kind of bled over time. So if you do have any questions for panelists, just send them in the chat and we could get them later this afternoon. I want to be respectful of the other presenters' time, so I'm going to pass it over now to Adam Woke, the Manager of Disability Services. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to all of you sharing. Really just fantastic to hear from everybody, and I think really more important, the courage that it takes to sometimes speak out about this, because I think far too often society puts individuals with disabilities in a place where they feel like they are less than because of an obstacle they might be facing. I think as a society, we have to do a better job recognizing that every human being, regardless of ability, faces obstacles, and that we need to treat those individuals with the respect that they deserve when it comes to helping overcome those obstacles. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about disability services at a college level. I'm going to talk about some of the obstacles. I'll talk a little bit about culture, and I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm going to send out when I'm done here. I will any images on here I will explain, and I have an accessible version of this in a PDF that I will send out to you all afterwards, so that you have as well. So let me just do that real quick. Feel free to put questions in the chat along the way as well. I'm happy to answer things along the way. So the first thing that's important here is this is on this page here, it's talking about disability defined as any physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, such as performing manual tasks, caring for oneself, walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, breathing, learning, working. This is a definition that has kind of come up through the ranks over the last several years because we wanted the disability community and disability offices and working with ADA or working with, like the Office of Civil Rights, in creating a definition that moves away from the medical model and moves more towards a model of empathy and understanding. So many of you have talked about empathy on here and the major lack of empathy that society still has towards an individual with a disability, and understanding how those things can make particular life activities difficult. And so spelling it out under this definition is the beginning of trying to help create a more empathetic definition to this word, because we need to do more to get people to understand what some of these obstacles look like. I want to talk a little bit about ADA versus IDEA. So on this slide here, this is an explanation of IDEA law and ADA law. And the reason that this is important, because I want to talk about it in terms of services that are provided individuals with disabilities in the K through 12 system in comparison to the college system. In K through 12, it functions under IDEA law. In higher ed, accommodations function under ADA law. In IDEA law in the K through 12 system, the law is written as a law of success. And what that means is that the schools, the high schools and the grade schools, are responsible for making sure that students not only get their accommodations, but find success for themselves academically, socially, and emotionally. That is a gigantic difference than the way ADA law is written for students in higher ed. That is a law of access. And what we mean by that is that in higher ed, we have to make sure that students in college have access to course materials, but we are not required to make sure that you are successful. And that's a really big difference because it puts a big amount of responsibility for accommodations on students in higher ed. And that transition of spending, whatever portion of your K through 12 experience, having the school build that for the student to then moving into college, where the student carries on so much more responsibility to make sure they have extra time on tests, to make sure that they have a note taker in class. That law of access can be really limiting for students with disabilities. I actually wish that ADA law was written differently because, if our office wanted to do the bare minimum, all we would have to do is just provide students with accommodations and stop there, and we would be meeting the legal requirements. But that's not, any good disability office with good disability specialists and managers recognize I'm not stopping there. We need to do more to provide the support, like helping students engage socially, helping students get over some of the emotional obstacles that might be getting in the way of their academic success, working on skill development and note taking and study skills and finding creative solutions to obstacles that an accommodation may not cover. And because ADA law is written differently, there's also a lot less accommodations that are available to students in higher ed. And so this could be a real uphill battle for a disability services office who really wants to do everything in their power to empower students with disabilities to be successful. And part of that is really helping students be included. There's an image on here and it's broken up into 4 boxes. One box is equality, one is equity, one is liberation, and one is inclusion. In the equality, and there are 3 kids watching a baseball game. In the equality box, the 3 kids watching the baseball game, one is tall, one is medium height, and one is short. And they're all standing on a box. And the individual who is short can't see the game. In the equity box, the tall person has no box but can see the game. The middle-sized person is on 1 box and can see the game. And the shorter person is on 2 boxes looking over the fence and can see the game. There's then on the bottom liberation and inclusion. And in liberation, the wall is taken away and everyone can see the game. But in inclusion, the wall is taken away, everyone can see the game, and everybody is dressed in the same clothes. And inclusion is where we really need to strive as a college, as a community, and as a society. We can no longer look at individuals with disabilities and being so drastically different from anybody else. Every single human being has strengths and weaknesses. We all have things that we can do well, and then we all have things that we can struggle with. A person with a disability is no less than anyone else. A disability is not a list of things you can't do. It's an explanation on how you do things. And I think it's important that it's time for society to step up and say, we have to make sure that everyone is included into our community, that everyone is included into our society, that everyone has access to the same things as everybody else. And for far too long, people with disabilities have been excluded from many of these environments. Many of you have said, we've come a long way, and I agree. In some ways we look at cutouts and sidewalks. We look at Braille that has to be added to certain places, things that we see in online communities, but it's nowhere close to being good enough. We still have a long way to go. Disability used to function under what was called a medical model, where we would say that a disability is a variation from the norm. And that definition really hurt people with disabilities from a long time because it defined them as being not normal or as different. And that created a really negative attitude and perception of people with disabilities. We now strive to work to what's called a diversity model, where it says a diversion from the norm is typical. There's no such thing as normal. Normal is a horrible word. I can't stand that word. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't exist in our society. Only thing that is normal is being unique. And once we start recognizing that as a society, that we all have our own story, we all have our own battle, we all are unique in our own way, we could start learning to treat everybody with the true equity that they deserve, because this is truly a social justice issue. 26% of adults have some form of a disability. 1 in 3 adults with disabilities have unmet healthcare needs. People with disabilities make $12,000 less than a person with a bachelor's degree, and we have 27% of people with disabilities who live in poverty. This is the only minority that anybody can fall into at any time. Anybody can develop a disability, a car accident, illness, things that come up, and these numbers are jarring. You know, and I think there's a lot of times in our society, and I think we do a really good job when we talk about a lot of different minorities who I feel have some very similar statistics and a lot of initiatives that are around people of different ethnicities and gender. But one of the most frustrating things for me in this job is when I sit at tables and I'm on teams and groups that talk about diversity, I have to remind them that disability is a part of that. And that's something that's a cultural issue that we have to fix and change. Disability deserves to be at any diversity table that we talk about. It deserves to be in any of these social justice, when we talk about initiatives and serving communities who are underserved. We need to start saying we need to start treating people with disabilities and serving that community like we do under anyone else. For far too long, that group has taken a back seat, and it's days like this, it's people like all of you speaking out that begins to start to draw that attention. You know, our office, listen, any disability office, I've worked in 3 different colleges now. I've worked at another community college. I've worked at a 4-year university, and I'm here now at my 2nd community college. And this is a battle. This is not just a JJC fight. This is a fight everywhere. This is a fight in our communities. This is a fight in our societies that we need to take up, because a disability services office is only as good as its resources. We can only do as much as we are resourced out to do, depending on staff we have, the amount of money that is given to our initiatives and things that we can fund, right? And so we do our best, but we really have to try to activate our community in order to really make the change that I think is important and necessary for people with disabilities. When it comes to higher ed and supporting people with disabilities, in our office, we look at 2 different things. It's accommodations and skill development. As I talked about earlier, ADA is more limiting in the number of accommodations that are given to students. So for example, we can do accommodations like extra time on test, or a note taker, or a tape recorder, or a scribe. But there are some things that are offered in the K through 12 system that are just not offered in higher ed, like test modifications and course modifications. So what we do in our office is we pair accommodations up with skill development, and we look to provide students, we want to help build their skill set so that they can provide themselves with the independent success that they're looking for. So we spend time training students on study skills, note-taking skills, content organization, time management, social skills, emotional regulation, things that we want to do, that sort of, teach a person to fish mentality. And I think when you marry the accommodation with some of the skill development, we really find that students can be successful. And in this next page here, this is sort of what we really aim to do. We start with helping students understand who they are as a learner, understanding and identifying strengths and weaknesses. Because when I can do that, then I can really advocate for myself. I'm sure all of you on this panel for your entire life have heard advocate for you. You got to advocate for yourself. And someone talked about a lot of times that there's a lot of blame shift, where we shift blame onto the individual with a disability. And we say, well, you really should have advocated for yourself. God, that's frustrating. It's very frustrating to hear, because there are some times where the environment should naturally be more accessible and that advocacy shouldn't have to be there. But what we try to do, while I don't have the power to make society perfect, what I do is that we have to try to equip students to deal with what the reality is in front of them. So When I help them understand who they are as learners, who they are, you know, their strengths and weaknesses in general, then they can really advocate for themselves to know what to ask for. One of the things that is really tough is there is a lot of people with disabilities who don't want to identify as having a disability. They don't want, because society has a negative stigma on them, they don't want to identify as an individual with a disability. I work a lot in the high schools. I cannot tell you how common this is. I started my career working in high schools as a counselor. And socially, for an individual with a disability in high school is just a social minefield. You know, the social development of a 13-year-old through a 17-year-old can be tough, and specifically tough on individuals with disabilities, where they can be really unforgiving. And so trying to get students to understand who they are as learners, to help them advocate for themselves, to say, listen, your disability is not a scarlet letter. It is not something that makes you less than. And to understand it, to accept it, to say, be proud of who it is, allows you then to advocate for yourself, to develop your skills, and to get you to a place to be the independent learner that you want to be. I think that's really, you know, helping any high school and college. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make anyone independent. That's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to get students and young adults into a place where they are independent learners, independent citizens. And I think, you know, when we look at it with individuals with disabilities, that's what our office aims to do in the support that they try to provide people. To get started with us, this is just a little 1 through 4 step-by-step. Starts with documentation. We have a file or a form online where students would fill out and attach their documentation of their disability. We then have an intake meeting where we sit down with that individual and get to know their experience, build rapport. Then we provide them with their accommodations, and we do an orientation where we teach them how to do it. And then every student with a disability gets a letter that's a notice of accommodations that a student is responsible for giving their faculty in order to use them in class. And accommodations, these are the main ones that are provided. And in this image, it shows these are all the different types of accommodations. Now, there could be some things outside of this, but these are usually the cookie cutter normal ones that are typically given out. And they are extra time or private room testing, scribe or a reader, note taker, a tape recorder, occasional absences, extra time on assignments, early registration, interpreters, assistive technology, or alternative book requests, or using screen readers like Kurzweil. But beyond just the accommodations, what we do in our office is we do pre and post advising. So before you pick your classes, we sit down and talk about what's your schedule need to look like. Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Are you an online person? You like hybrid? Do you like face-to-face? Should you spread your day out? Do you like space between your classes? We try to help you build a schedule that fits your strengths and weaknesses. We then do coaching where we can meet with students, once a week for up to an hour to help do just troubleshoot school and troubleshoot life. It can be any academic, social, emotional, or career focus. We then have accessible technology that we could provide students in a variety of different ways that helps create access. And then advocacy. Listen, you guys were talking about Braille in the A building. That's just like the tip of the iceberg on things that need to be more accessible in our physical space and in our online space. So the last thing we do is we're the advocates. We're the ones at the table, banging on the table, making sure this happens, trying to fight for things to happen. When a teacher, an instructor, a staff member, someone who works here does not provide the support that is necessary for an individual with disability, we're the advocate that comes in to make sure that that is properly handled. So I just want to end this by saying that I recognize the uphill battle that this is. I admire the creativity and resiliency of individuals with disabilities. I myself grew up with absolute terrible anxiety. I didn't get it diagnosed until my mid-20s, and it wreaked havoc. You know, being a male in the 90s with anxiety was really hard, and I got, you know, that social kickback, whether it was the making fun of or feeling isolated because of it, feeling less than, you know, the negative voice that it created in my head to tell me what I could and could not do. It was hard. It was really hard. I was so happy to get the diagnosis when I did, when I was older, because it finally said, you know what, like, this is not something that, you know, makes me less than anybody else. It's something that, it allows me to be creative and resilient. It taught me toughness. It taught me creativity. And so I really respected and admire the hell out of all of you. And please know our office is always open to any of you. And, I'd like to, if there's any questions or thoughts, I'm going to take this down and I'm open. I'm happy to answer any of those.
Thank you, Adam. We'll give a minute to see if any questions come in. I don't know if you were on, but there have been multiple shout outs to disability services and how great they've been for students on campus, both students in this meeting and abroad. So shout out to you again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Don't see any questions in the chat. Now's the time to enter them.
Or please raise your hand, speak up, anything. I'm open to.
Right.
Yeah, this is Keith Allen. I was about to leave and I had actually sent a text because I had to go, but I appreciate you guys very much for allowing me to participate and learn more. This is my second time attending. And I just wanted to kind of like say, I don't pretend to know answers, but I can say this, that I've seen a lot of students here share a lot about things that they can see that we need, that we as the normal people, as you put it, that's the woke, is it?
Yep.
Yeah. And I just want to encourage them to say that I see a lot of talent here within this group, within the people talking. And I think they're going to play a major portion. I see so much talent here, guys. And I think they're going to make a major, let's just say, addition to helping these things to come about. So that's all I needed to say. And I was on my way out when you asked. So thanks so much, guys, again. God bless you. Ashley, that's my granddaughter. Okay. And I see my daughter was here earlier. She left. But thank you guys so much again. Right?
Thank you, Keith.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.
All right, Adam, I don't see any other questions coming in. So thanks again for joining us and sharing that presentation. And if any questions do come in after the fact, we'll connect you or connect them to you.
Thank you all for the time on the platform. I really, really do appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you. Okay, so now we have our keynote speaker, Jovan Benson. So Jovan, as soon as you're ready, the floor is yours.
Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. Okay. Let's get this started. Patrick, before I'm going to need your help if there's any questions to read the chat off to me.
I will.
Okay.
I think I can handle that.
Okay. All right. So, first of all, I would like to say hello and good afternoon to all that are present and all that are not present. Because this is being recorded and, this is going to be seen more than once. So hello to everybody under the sound of my voice. My name is Jovan Benson. I am 35 years of age. My disabilities are blindness and ADHD. So I'm just gonna dive into it if that's okay. Well, actually, before I do that, I'm a little bit nervous. So shout out to the president, Esley, the vice president, Emily, Adam and Patrick and everyone here. I appreciate being here. And yeah, my goal is to inspire you because a lot of the things that have been said, a lot of things that I've thought about saying has already been said. So let's see what we can do with this. Here we go. Now, let's all relax. And I want to just totally have a different way of listening. Because when we listen, we normally don't listen, we hear things, but we don't listen. And listening, and it's not only involving the sound traveling to your ears and you deciphering what the sound is, it's actually deciding what to do with that sound and how to interpret it and can it be beneficial. You hear what's coming through your ears and you decide whether it's good for you, whether you're going to keep it or throw it away. So this is the type of listening that I want to have. I remember being young and not knowing that I had a disability. My first experience of me having a disability was in kindergarten. And I remember we used to play this game called Steal the Bacon, right? So the game was like this. They would have a bowling pin in the middle of the gymnasium. And what they would do is that they would split class up. And then it would be it would have to be an even number of on each team. Like if there's 5 on team red, there have to be 5 on team blue. And everybody has a corresponding number from 1 to 5. So if I were to call 3, or the teacher would yell 3, her name was Mrs. Agnew. Mrs. Agnew would yell 3, and then all of a sudden the ones with the number, the children with the number 3 on their chest would run and try to take the pin and then run back to their team. Whoever took the pin first, whoever had their hands on the bowling pin, was the one to claim it. Well, this was a fun game for me though, but it's kind of hard to do that when you are, when you cannot see that well. So therefore you're running into walls. It doesn't help, but of course I didn't understand. I'm thinking that this is pretty normal. This is a normal way of living. But then all of a sudden I start to notice that the children on my team, my classmates, would be upset at me. And the more they'd be upset at me, the more I felt down about myself. The more I felt down about myself, the more I did not want to play. Because I didn't understand. And I came home one day and I told my grandmother, who's a saint, I said, Granny, none of the children want to play with me and I don't understand what's going on. And she would say, well, baby, what? And I say, well, I would tell her about the game. And she said, your eyes are broken. So I knew that there was something different about me from the beginning. And this is before we discovered ADHD now. So I knew that my eyes were broken. I was wondering why my grandmother would do things like put duct tape in front of the TV and say nobody but Poopa. That's my nickname. Nobody but Poopa get to sit in front of the duct tape. I thought I was pretty special. But the older I got, the more I realized that specialness came with the price. How many of you guys felt as if you were alone on this journey? I remember day after day watching the kids talk about about what they're going to do after school. They're going to go to each other's house. I see them falling in love and wondering, is there a place for me? Always being picked last in the class. Wondering, is there a place for me?
You're not the only one, buddy.
Is there a place? Oh, by the way, it doesn't help when the staff, the students, the teachers, not understanding you. They know I had a visual impairment, but they ADD in the late 80s, early 90s was something to be, everybody seemed to have it. So it was a very misunderstood, it was disorder, you know, and believe it or not, it's one of the oldest disorders out there. So they would say things like either, you know, like you never thought that you would hear, Miss Lacey, your son is not smart. Your grandson's not smart. He's lazy. He doesn't want to put the work ethic and things like that. So you grow up with hearing all of this negative stuff. Why don't you try hard? You can focus on this, but you can't focus on that. You're never going to make it if you keep on being like this. Then eventually you're going to start to absorb that, especially being a kid. From the ages 1 to 6, from ages 1 to 7, you absorb everything. You like a sponge. So imagine hearing all of these things, these negative things from 1 to 7. And it doesn't stop at 7. It goes on and on. And the older you get, the more you realize that actually, you know, because when you're born, it's bad enough that 5 minutes after your birth, you are labeled already. You are, you know, you got a name. You might even, you know, if your family's a Christian or a Muslim, you might even be Muslim by default. You might have all of these things. It's bad enough that you have all these decisions made for you before 5 minutes after you're born. And then all of a sudden you realize that you have a disability. Your parents sometimes don't know what to do. So it's a very lonely, lonely journey sometimes. And I said that to say this, that if we, and you guys can hear, I can feel that you guys are here, while you guys are hearing what I'm saying. So what do we do about this? Well, let's see what we can do. How many, I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember arcades, going to the arcade game. How many of y'all remember that? You can take yourself off a chat. You can put yourself on the chat if you want to. Who remembers those things? Video games and arcade games. Going to the arcade with you know, you have to go to you get your quarters and you go to the arcade.
I remember.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we're old one. We put yeah. No. No, but I remember going to the arcade and all of a sudden you would go there and the children see, for those that don't know, you would go to the arcade and the children would have their quarters, a bag of quarters, and they would stand in line to play a game like Pac-Man or Super Mario. And what they would do is they would insert their quarters. And the kid who had the quarters, you know, there'd be a whole bunch of kids behind them waiting until the kid runs out of his quarters. And then once he runs out of quarters, then he has to go to the front to get changed. So therefore, a new kid would take his place. Well, there was this one kid who was smart. And what he would do is he would bring his little brother. And what he would do is that he would have his little brother. He would be playing the game with his bag of quarters. And then once his bag of quarters was about to be empty, he would give a couple bucks to his brother and he'll tell his brother, go run and give me some change. Give me some quarters. That way he can stay in the game as long as he wants until he was finished. The moral of that story is the person that can stay in the game the longest is the person that brings the most change. Mighty companions, this is what we're here for. Haven't you noticed that Adam said something that came to my attention, There's a lot of the things that we as a disabled people or so-called disabled people face tends to, we can look at minorities, other minorities, and we can see some of the same statistics. We can look at racism and see some of the same statistics in African Americans. We could see in women and the elderly, and we can see how people tend to, when they don't understand you, they either fight you or ignore you, or try to understand you. But with our experiences as disabled people, we're often ignored. Compliments are like money. If imagine how different life would have been if for you, if someone were to encourage you more than they would ridicule you. If the children would if the children would understand you. Imagine if someone came and told you, "Hey, you look beautiful today," or I admire what you do," or "Let's go to the movies." Even these are compliments in themselves, and compliments are like money. Imagine what you can do with a compliment. True. My mom. I'm in her kitchen right now. She's gone. But yesterday she was at work and she was working pretty hard and she was crying and she was upset, and I told Mom it's gonna be all right. She's going through some stuff. And before she got home, I cleaned up the house, I cooked the dinner, I did all of these things, and she came and I came in and I just wrote her a note. "This is for you. I love you." That changed her whole perspective of how her day went. That changed her whole outlook. That shifted her whole paradigm. And trust me, my mom, I love her. She fusses a lot. You gotta understand. My mom would go to the heavenly gates and see St. Peter and actually would complain that the gates are, that there's a speck of dust. But giving her that compliment and just let her know that it's so that she's okay, life is okay, that she's beautiful, that I love her, it changes her whole paradigm. And imagine what that would do if we have a whole bunch of people going on a kindness conspiracy. But I mean, just doing random acts of love. Imagine what this world would be.
Very true.
You guys you have to understand that we have a gift. And one of the gifts that we have is empathy. Right? Mm-hmm. Empathy. We get to see if you, the cool thing about having all of these common distinctions with racism, ageism, discrimination against people with disability is that that although we are not in the same boat, we are in the same storm. Which means that we are in a unique place to change the world. Because we see it differently, we experience it differently, and we know what it's like to be alone. So we do. I've seen so much compassion come out of people with disabilities. Which shows that a disability is nothing but a state of mind. Folks, don't let nobody dish your ability. Don't let nobody tell you that your life doesn't serve a purpose. Your life serves a big purpose. I'm always surprised at how many people truly listen to you. You'll be surprised. I'm surprised. So to me, I was in the grocery store and I was crying about my life because I didn't have no money and my car bounced and everything, and I was in a relationship at the time, and I had to go back and to my girlfriend and tell her, baby, I don't know if we can eat today. And I was sitting I was crying. And I was upset, and the security guard comes out of the grocery store, and I know him. We know each other just because I've lived around there for years. And so he says, hey, Javon, how you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. On second thought, I'm not doing great at all. And I told him what was on my mind. And I said, I don't even know if I want to be here anymore. You see? And he said to me, do you know that I used to be an alcoholic? And I stopped. And I said, I'm very glad to hear that. He said, no, you don't understand. I lost my family. I lost my wife. I lost a lot of things. And I didn't, and I was about to, and I just got so tired of life. And one day you were walking in the grocery store and you were talking to someone and you were talking to them about choices. And you were just talking loud, but you were talking about choices and everything. And you said something, and what you said gave me helped me make the decision to quit alcohol. And I got my family back. I got my wife back. And I got them back only because you gave them to me. How many of y'all actually had that moment where you felt like nobody was watching you? You gotta understand, we're in a very unique place. I mean, come on now. We walk around with extra equipment, with braille writers and canes and wheelchairs and medication, accommodations, all of these things, and you think that we're not being noticed. And although it seems like we're being noticed in a negative way, but you don't really know how inspiring you are. And you're more, and I'm not, and that's you without you even talking. Right? You don't even have to open your mouth. You just have to exist and living. So I thank God that that we are all alive today to make this change, because we need to. This world is on its head. We don't know where it's going. With COVID-19 still rearing its head and things like that, and people are still afraid to go outside. People are still afraid to love each other. People are still afraid to even shake hands. So we're living in a world where it seems like there's not a lot of love there. So I want everyone under the sound of my voice to try to do something for me. And I'm talking to me too, because I teach what I have to learn. I want to try to do a random act of kindness every week. Just one. And once you get used to that, go to 2. And when you get used to that, go to 3. This is the kindness conspiracy. We're going to love today. You see, because we know how it feels to be pushed aside, ostracized, scandalized, vilified even. And just like the struggles with other minorities, we've come far, because just like like the slaves went back during slavery, Black African Americans have come far. But when back then, we weren't considered human either, as disability. If you were born with a disability, invisible or visible, Either you would be shunned in the house, or they would put you inside of a asylum where the treatment wasn't good at all. You know, they would chain people to the bed sometimes. So we've come a long way. I'm giving you guys quarters today so we can make change. And I want you guys to give quarters so that you can make change. We are, let me look at my time. Give me a second. Ooh, 1:30. All right. I'm almost done because I'm opening it up for some questions or some thoughts and things like that. So, but you are the light in this dark world. And when you are standing in the dark, and if you light a candle, that one flame actually will make darkness run. And that's who you are. You know, love is who you are. It's you're so busy worried about what's normal rather than what's natural. Love is natural. Kindness is natural. It's when you start worrying about the outcome of your life is when you're worrying about what's normal and what's not. And society don't even know what's normal because it changes. Right and wrong changes throughout time. Back then, we thought it was right to burn women at the stake because they were witches. Now we know it. Now we think it's wrong. So now we know better. So we evolve, we change, we grow. But in order to do that, we need people like us. It takes strength to have a disability and still have a smile on your face, still get up and go to school and do what you got to do, go to work, dealing with all of the things that you got to deal with. It takes strength. And actually, I have no doubt in my mind that everyone here has the strength, because if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be here. There's a lot of people that are not here today because they didn't have the strength. No disrespect towards them. No, that's nothing to do with who they are as a people. But some people are a lot more stronger than others. You know, I hear the story about Juan dropping his phone on the floor just to get a girl's number. Man, I would never think to do that. That's like playerific right there. I gotta like power to you, man. So that takes a lot, to put yourself out there to risk rejection. But somebody has got to do it. Somebody's got to stand there. Somebody got to stand out there. Somebody got to stand in the gap for these people that just don't know any better. Some people they don't know any better. They don't know much about people with disabilities. This is why this club is here, right? Disability awareness. This is why we're here. I'm going to, I asked my mother this morning before she left. I said, Ma, I want to do something special. And I'm gonna let you have it. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should tell these beautiful people? She said, don't tell them anything, boy, sing it. So I said, okay, Ma, what song should I sing? And she said, sing my favorite song. Because she's gonna be listening to this when I get it. Hi, Mom! She's gonna be listening to this with a gift. So But I want to sing this song. And I want to see, do you see yourself in it? It's an old school song. So some of you may recognize it, some of you may not. But I'm gonna get it ready. So here we go. I was born by the river in a little town. Oh, and just like that river, I've been running ever since. But it's been a long time coming. But I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, and I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. But it's been a long time coming. But I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. You see, I go to the movies and I go downtown, but they keep telling me don't hang around. But it's been a long time coming. But I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. So I go to my brother and I say, brother, 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 can you help me? But he keeps on knocking me down on my knees. Oh, there's times when I thought I couldn't carry on. I know that I can be strong, but it's been a long time coming. But I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. So I love that song, and I love you guys. And there's nothing that you can do about it. And if you have, wait, I'll make sure I got everything. That's everything. Look, let me check. Look at my notes. Yeah. It's not about what you do in this life. You're not a human doing. You're a human being. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your love. You guys take care. If you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jovan. That was great. Very well done, and you've got a beautiful voice.
Thank you. So it's open up for questions, and and I'm an open book. Ask anything.
Yeah, we have a few minutes now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or submit them in the chat for Jovan.
I like Jovan better, Patrick.
Yeah, sorry. It's really hard for me to remember the hard J.
You know, you can call me anything but collect. You're fine.
I was gonna say thank you so much for the message. It was a really great message and it was a beautiful song.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you guys for inviting me.
Yeah, you have a beautiful voice.
Oh, well, not as beautiful as yours, Juan. I know, So,
This is
Hey,
Cornell.
can anybody hear me today?
Oh, I wanted to say something really quick.
Oh, sure,
Thank
go
you
ahead,
so
CJ,
much,
sorry.
Javon, for saying your speech and the song. It was very beautiful, and I love the message. And I really appreciate it.
What's your name?
My name is Cornell Lurie. I'm the secretary of the Disability Awareness Club.
Oh, okay. Well, it's nice to meet you, and thank
Nice
you.
to meet you too. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Okay, Otis, I think you had your hand raised.
Oh, yes, I have a busy schedule and I do have to leave soon, but I wanted to say something really quick for Javon. First and foremost, Javon, how are you doing today?
I'm all right, OD1 Kenobi. How you doing?
I think you got that from Esley. You know, she calls me that all the time too.
Oh, it's
So,
easy. It's easy. It's just it rolls off the tongue.
it most definitely does, man. I definitely appreciate that. Oh yeah, oh yeah, Devin, I got you. So, oh, sorry about that. But yeah, I wanted to come in here really quick. For those of you who don't know, I'm an audience member here for the panelists, and I wasn't able. As a matter of fact, I have a busy schedule, and I couldn't join the panel for everybody. But I do want to come on here and say that after being on this panel, it's been a great experience so far, and so forth. A big shout out to all of Disability Awareness Club for putting this event together, and definitely a big shout out to you, Javon, for putting out the message. And also, I know that both of us haven't talked to each other in a while, and I know it's getting kind of difficult with busy schedules and everything. But I do want to come on here and say that that you gave your gift to this entire community, and yeah, it makes me want to continue my advocacy and allyship to the disability community, and for you to put out your gift with that one has put out a tremendous performance and a tremendous blessing to everybody here. So yeah, I definitely want to thank you, and I definitely want to thank the panelists for speaking their minds and sending out their positive messages. The same thing goes for you, Javon, because you know, without amazing people, you know, we wouldn't be in this world today, living in this beautiful world today, if it wasn't for all of us who has created so much magic in a sense. So Javon, like I said, I know you and I haven't talked, but God bless you, and keep sharing your gifts, man, because you got the greatest gift ever. I know it's kind of hard for me to say, but you definitely got the greatest gift. And just like you said, we're not human doings, we're human beings, and we are here to strive through. We are here to spread a message. We are here to bless everybody in attendance. So thank you.
Well said, Otis. Thank you.
All right, so you guys have the good rest of your day. God bless, and peace, love, positivity, and miracles to all of you guys. I love you, each and every one of you.
All right, you too, Otis.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you for coming.
All right, no problem. God bless.
All right, so unless we have any other questions, I'll give a second here for any other questions to come in for Jovan. If not, again, we really appreciate you coming on. It was really great to hear from you. You have a lot of
thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't could you put, if anybody have any questions that they would like to ask, that's on, I am a life coach. I do that. And I like, and I like to help. If you have any questions or thoughts, feelings, please feel free to email me. Can we write down the email in the chat? It's jovan.p.benson. Jovan is JOVAN .p as in Paul .benson BENSON @gmail.com, and I will answer your questions.
I just put that email in the chat, and then we have a message from Melissa, who I don't think she has mic access, so she asked me to read it. So she goes by Mel.
I'm Mel.
And it says, I've been having a really rough day, and listening to you sing really made me feel at ease once more. Thank you so much for your story, and thank you for blessing us with your voice and talent.
And thank you, Melissa, for actually thank you very much. God understand. It was very difficult. I knew that I might speak about a month and a half ago, and I went through notes, wrote down these notes and tore up these notes, and then I tore up.
That has nothing to do with me.
So I appreciate it. I'm glad that you were blessed. And and it's you give it to us too. That's the thing. That's the biggest thing that I want. That's the biggest takeaway is that the reason why I am a blessing to you is because you're a blessing to me. It can't be any other way.
Well said, Joe. I almost said Jovan again. Jovan, thank you so much. We're going to keep things moving here. I will be sure to share your email address if anybody wants to reach out to you. But thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So this last bit on our agenda is a video montage from CTF Illinois. So CTF Illinois is an organization out of Orland Park, Tinley Park, and it supports people with diverse disabilities through day programming, residential supports, employment services, and more. Their mission is simple: to empower each individual they serve to live the life they want to live. CTF is committed to their vision of creating a culture where people are not defined by their differences, but recognized for the value they bring to their communities. So my wife actually works for this organization. Shelly is her name, and she compiled some clips and interviewed some folks over there and compiled this video for us. So I'm really excited to show it, and that's what we'll be doing here now.
What comes to mind when you think about Disability Awareness Day?
I think we've come a lot farther in terms of disability awareness and not shoving away people with disabilities into the corners of society. It's not this hush-hush taboo thing anymore, but I also think a lot more needs to be done in terms of social inclusion.
Making sure people know not everyone is the same, but they should be treated the same. Debbie.
Disability and became one thing. You want to do something for yourself? Help them. Please. I'm begging you. Help them because you need all the help you can get.
Disability is when people are disabled and in wheelchairs or they can walk and talk, and that's what disability means to me. It's taking care of other people that are that have different disabilities, people that can't hear or talk or see.
I have never really thought about it because it's my life. I do not see myself any differently than others. Austin.
Advocacy. I like to come to advocacy. I like to be a leader, and that's what I am.
It comes to mind where you care about people who are disabled or who are mentally disabled.
That people should know about us and know that we are people too, and they can help us achieve our goals. Robin.
People with disabilities have families, have love lives, have careers, social lives, all of the things that anybody without a disability would have and desire.
Why do you think it's important to have a Disability Awareness Day?
Because we got to do something for us. Not for them, for us. Because we got a lot of things need to be done as soon as possible.
Because I am a human being, too. We all are. Austin.
handicapped people have rights.
Disability Awareness Month is important to me because I feel like people need help and people need really, really, they, they take care of us. I like to help other people.
People who aren't like us don't understand. They need to understand and take time to understand. It's not okay to be rude to us or make fun of us. We are people, too. Robin.
Because there are people out there who don't care about us, about people with disabilities.
I mean, just because I have a disability doesn't mean I can't get around like I do.
So people understand that some of us have to learn differently and do things differently. It can happen to anyone, and no one should be treated differently. Debbie.
I think we need to move beyond just acknowledging that disabilities exist and the whole sympathy, empathy dynamic and shift the focus onto highlighting the similarities and the same base desires that people with and without disabilities have.
So they can get jobs and stuff, and they can go move forward to live on their own time.
What is your message to others on how to treat people with disabilities?
They gotta realize they're a person and a people.
Be nice. We should be treated with respect. You need to think about how you would want to be treated if you were in our shoes. Robin.
Well, people, you have to treat everyone else with respect.
Okay, now you should treat us with respect to others. Fighting each other, an argument, right?
Just say, treat you nice and respect like you do with them. Help people when they need help.
We are more capable than you think. We are human beings. We understand. We may express ourselves differently, but you should not treat us any differently. Austin.
They can learn, and they can learn how to manage and learn to live on their own.
Don't put me down because I have a disability, because we are all people like the rest.
Be kind. To be treated with kindness. We aren't rude or mean to others, so they shouldn't be to us. Debbie.
Let's say, like, you need to use good talk. Is one thing. Use good talk.
So they need a lot of help, a lot of love, and a lot of understanding. Sometimes it's rough for them.
Let us tell our stories, let us speak for ourselves. Don't let, just like somebody who's not affected by issues of racism really doesn't have the right to call certain things or certain aspects of the media and so on and so forth, doesn't have the aspect to determine what racism is. People without disabilities don't really have the right to determine what ableism is.
What advice would you give to a younger person with a disability?
This is not a game to play. This is a life. This is like we talk about. This is a situation where you need to be doing something for yourself, not for us, but for yourself.
Enjoy life. That is what it is all about. Austin.
Don't let others determine what you should want or desire in life.
Yes,
That's
stand
your
up for
motto,
you.
right?
Stand up for yourself.
Because my rights.
Always talk about how you feel and fight for your rights. Robin.
And look at me. I'm made for the top.
You
Because
did?
they should made for the top too. Because they can't, if they can do it, we can do it. We can do it, they can do it. Because get your butt up the chair and do something about it.
Have fun and love yourself, no matter what anyone else says. Debbie.
Hold on to what you desire, and hold on to what is important to you and what you want from life, and don't let the systems that are in place dwindle that or make you doubt that. Sometimes you have to create the path and not just follow the one that's already set before you.
Thank you for taking the time to hear our message.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so special thanks to CTF Illinois and the folks they interviewed over there and created that little video montage for us. I really enjoyed it. Hope you all did as well. Now we're about at the end. I did want to take a few minutes because we kind of had to rush through the end of the panel, and we had some time designated for Q&A for any of our panelists. So I just want to give a couple extra minutes. If there were any questions to our panelist members, now's the time to either submit them in the chat or put yourself off mute. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in just yet. Feel free to email me or Esley or get in touch with the club on our various social media channels, and we'll get back to you if you do have any questions. We really appreciate everyone attending today. I want to give another special thanks to all of our presenters, panelists, contributors, and various departments across the college that helped put this event on for us. And then finally, I want to thank again the members of Disability Awareness Club that overcame the challenges in front of us and had limited members and doing this virtually and learning as we go. But again, I think it was a great job done by all of you, and I'm happy to be proud of the event, and I'm very proud of you all. So great stuff. I will now pass it over to Esley Ramos, the club president, for any closing thoughts she may have. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone who's still here. Not that numbers matter, but I kept looking at the attendance, and we had quite a bit for it being online. But thank you, everyone who's here, and hope you guys had fun as well as learn. And like I said earlier, hopefully you can take, if not many things, at least one thing with you. And thank you so much for being here. And you can email me. I'm the Disability Awareness Club president, but you can email me if you're interested in joining, if you're not in the club already, or just any questions you may have. Patrick, will you be able to put my email in there?
Yep, putting it in right now.
Thank you.
I'll also put mine. And then I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jake Tahini as well from Media Services. He's working behind the scenes to make this run flawlessly, and he also stepped in as a game show host for us. So many thanks to him, and as well for our interpreters. I know we have Jillian here now, but we had another interpreter earlier. So special thanks to you all as well.
Thank you, everyone, for everything.
Take care. Thank you for a great event.